welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout of thanks and appreciation to Smith Tools and Purchase, Level Playing Poem, Vitali Z, Colton James, BG, Survive the Spin, FE Patriot, Thomas van der Zander, Chris Wouters, Sea Level Cultist, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, The Name's Burley, Jason Hornsby, JMels24, Unamento, Iron26, Endless, Retro Bill, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Hairy Blade, Mobile Mac 777, Rob W, Del West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Chow Young Cat, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Links, as I say, to Patreon are below this video. And with that, I will hand across to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Yeah.
Cool.
You what?
Like I seen him making a mistake. I didn't say nothing. I should have said something. But he was taking measurements. And instead of taking a measurement of each, like, what do you call them? The pickets, the 2x4s that go in between, or your decking. So he's measuring from the bottom to the top, but he didn't measure the pickets. So it was 2 inches off. Because when he put it up, it was too high against the post. And I knew right away. I said, because you got these at 34 inches, I bet they're 32 inches. He didn't listen to me, so he just went around measuring. And he said, I'm off by 2 inches. He said, I know. But I didn't do it in a way where I, trying to, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you call that? When you upstage somebody? I was making it in a way like, I think we got to measure those. Anyway, it's working out good.
Well,
good to hear.
It's just that he's hard of hearing. And here's the funny thing. I'm screaming, basically, to communicate with the guy. I got the show on very low in my pocket. He's like, are you on the phone? I said, what do you got, selective hearing? I'm screaming to communicate with you, and you asked me if I'm on the phone. I said, no, I have a show on. He goes, can you turn it off because that's annoying me? So I can't listen to the show because I don't have headphones. So I got to stay on mute. In about 15 minutes, it's going to be the same situation because I'll be there. But it's like funny. Nathan's voice just annoys people. Or it could be the fact that every time he's talking about measurements, people get annoyed. I tried to lay it on him, and he's Christian. And he's like just shaking his head like, what is this world coming to? Like, I could see the disgust on him that I could dare say that the earth is flat and not a sphere. Crazy.
Most people just don't want to know.
He deals with measurements all day long. How hard could it be to comprehend what I tell him? He's like, all the scientists, that's the first thing. All the scientists.
did you watch my video or the other video that I used to promote that alley woman?
I didn't hear that.
Said, did you see the video I produced yesterday promoting the woman that Robot Underground did a re-up for? called Ali McFreedom or something like that.
No, I seen it, but I didn't have a chance to look at it.
He's basically pointing out that there's a high degree of mental expenditure required in processing anything new, and that if you've heard the same thing repeated, you'll much more likely take it as read without necessarily giving it much thought. So if you can keep repeating things over and over again, they'll be accepted, regardless of how crazy or off the cuff or off the wall or whatever. You know, if they're bonkers notions, it doesn't matter as long as you've heard it repeated, because then your brain doesn't have to use up much energy. So when you come up with something that fundamentally alters someone's worldview, they will brace against it because it requires mental energy, which is at a premium.
That's crazy.
Do you want me to dig it out so you can hear it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Ali McForever, not whatever I said, McFreedom.
We always felt like our content.
This video will serve as a shout out for Ali McForever. I was introduced to Ali by Patrick over on the Robot Underground channel, and typically Patrick's dealing with videos about subwoofers and audio in general. I re-uploading one of Ali McForever's videos, but at the time that I actually covered the George Orwell 1984 and Animal Farm videos that she made, I had no idea who she actually was. Thanks to Divergent Droid, who dug out the links to her YouTube channel, I can now actually present her on her own channel, so you can go and subscribe to Ali McForever. So with that, I'll pass across so you can watch one of her videos. She has in, I don't know if it's this video, but other videos that she's produced, explained that the general witch hunt towards women who are pregnant and taking painkillers is actually as a direct result of the outspoken nature of autistic women, and she is one of them. So for that reason, I've found her videos extremely addictive, not because she's autistic, but because of her pattern recognition and outspoken nature and brutal honesty. So I'm pretty sure that all of my subscribers will enjoy a lot of Ali McForever's videos, and I think she's definitely worthy of a shout out. So I will be putting a link to Ali McForever's video in the comment section of this video, so you can pop along to her video and let her know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, with a polite comment that does not immediately get removed by the YouTube algorithmic bots or indeed Ali herself. So be polite, be kind, and just let her know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a nice comment. With that, I will play out a bit of her video called The Illusory Truth Effect.
Simple psychological pattern that affects all of us. It's called the illusory truth effect, which is a fancy academic way of saying repetition works really well. When you hear a claim made again and again, especially if it's made by different people at the same time.
I wouldn't normally interrupt so quickly because I've obviously done my own voiceover on this video, but I'll go through in a second about how bent is level and level is bent. If you can have Dave McKeegan, Simon, Dan, Professor Dave Explains, and Craig all say at the same time that actually bent is what we mean when we say level, then that's an example of the nonsense that's contradictory to axiomatic principles being repeated so that you don't have to involve yourself in any actual mental expenditure. It's just, oh, well, 4 people have said it. Therefore, level is bent.
Your brain is more likely to trust and believe that statement, whether or not it's true, whether or not it's absurd and obviously not true. If you hear it enough, you start to accept it. In 1977, they got students to read short, plausible statements. Each student came in 3 times, 3 weeks apart. Some statements were repeated across the multiple sessions, others were not. At the end, they asked the students to rate which statements they believed were most true. The statements that had been repeated quietly and strategically throughout this process were the ones the students ranked as most true. Any statements that were introduced as new later in the process, the students were suspicious of, but they didn't require proof or extra facts. It was the repetition alone that moved these ratings. This is a really important study. It proves the brain is processing repeated statements more easily. What these psychologists found in the context of their behavior study can be corroborated with findings from neuroscience and systems thinking as well. Energy saving is a core basic biological rule for your brain. Your brain is an energy-hungry organ. There is a finite bandwidth with what you can do in any 24 hours. Your brain consumes 20% of your energy. It has to keep costs down. You can't process every sound, every sight, every sentence at full critical depth. Your attention narrows the funnel. When you must respond quickly, shortcuts, I've heard this already somewhere, will always beat perfect, critical, paused reflection. And our society rewards that impulse and reaction and quick decision making.
So in case it isn't obvious for any of my audience, this is obviously directly referencing what we cover on Flat Earth Debate on a daily basis in terms of the repetition of what we call the globe lie. This repeated religious fanaticism has been instilled in people's mind's eye from birth, therefore requires a minimal amount of energy to simply understand and repeat again, keeping the cycle going. Now, hey Dank, are you hearing this in Discord? It doesn't seem to be, my light doesn't seem to be flashing. Can you not hear in this video?
No, I don't hear a video, but I hear you talking.
Oh. That's frustrating. Okay, thanks. Now, the overall combat to this for us is to share things like our show. And you hearing it now?
Yeah, now I hear it.
That's weird. Okay, well, at least it's working. And get that rhetoric repeated so that the mental energy required to understand implicitly how Earth being measured flat is something that isn't necessarily requiring any thought whatsoever. It just is an as-is statement of truth and fact that requires absolutely no validation whatsoever. It's just a fact of measurement in terms of horizontal distance measurements and lines of scale on a flat map with a 2D directionality in the form of north, south, east and west. All of these axiomatic principles are known by everybody to be true. However, if you can consistently repeat the rhetoric that a horizontal line is actually curving, because you have a belief that Earth is curving, and this is repeated ad nausea, you will understand it as being the case, even though it defies an axiomatic principle of measurement, the measurement of Earth and its flatness. Earth is measured flat, and no matter how much people repeat to you that flatness, level, and horizontal actually means curve, this is simply a shortcut your brain will take to save energy. In the meantime, the actual axiomatic principles of Earth measurement will always be horizontal and level in order for triangulation, trig, horizontal distance measurement, level flight to be true.
Your brain is constantly predicting what's coming next. If the inputs matches your guesses, your brain gets to spend less energy. Repeated inputs have their own well-worn, well-trodden paths in your brain. That's why it feels safe. Less figuring it out, less brain firing, less cost. Your actual processing of the information is easier if it feels familiar to you. This is useful when you're trying to drive home or you see your friend at a party. We feel like it's a stable judgment because the world shouldn't be changing that much. Your brain is not equipped to deal with this level of change and inconsistency from one second to the next. And when threatened, you will shut down and default to predictions that are easy.
Again, if this sounds familiar, there's a reason. When it comes to familiarity and repetition of a rhetoric that is designed to keep you in a place that isn't real, be it an outer space sky vacuum in the violation of the second law of thermodynamics, that's gas dispersion and entropy, violating the area claimed to be above your head, that would be a sky vacuum. There's a reason why repeating the notion of having a sky vacuum with men floating around in an orbital motion, also derived from flat earth measurements, is useful. Meanwhile, any change or deviation from this automatically instilled belief that you're on a spherical surface as opposed to an adherence to the axiomatic principles of measurement of a flat planar surface that is done daily by surveying and people navigating, flying, using boats and making maps, is always going to be the case. So with that, I'll round out and say, please do go along to Ali Muckforever's channel and let her know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a polite comment that doesn't immediately get removed from her video by the YouTube algorithmic bots or indeed by her personally. So once again, Ali Muckforever is the name of the channel. Subscribe to her and let her know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. There you go.
Very true. A brain function collapse. It's amazing when she talks about the percentage of the amount of energy that the brain consumes in relation to the rest of the body. So when you've been programmed with a set of data your whole life, and then you come across something that such as flat Earth, not only does your brain have to try and evaluate the data that you've already been given throughout your whole life, it has to ascertain the new data, and that's where you get a lot of cognitive dissonance.
Yep.
Yep, well put.
I don't know. What point are you trying to make, Nathan?
The point is, why is it so difficult to point something out when it's an axiomatic principle like Earth measurement? Like you can see on screen, you've got those three triangles. Can you see those, Brian?
Yes, I can. So, yes.
Okay. If I now tell a bull believer that the triangles are representative of ground positions, they are. It says on it, right? By measuring these three angles, an observer knows his location. Now, without saying it, it's obviously your location on the ground. And this axiomatic principle of utilisation of triangles requires the base of the triangle to be flat. At which point, that is incongruent with something that's been repeated to you over and over again. The ground is not flat, it's curving away from you at 8 inches per mile squared. The world is spherical. Therefore, you have an inconsistency, what Jardot just described as cognitive dissonance, accurately so. So the reason I'm playing out Ali's video is to point out that there's a reason you'll brace against it, even though it's an axiomatic principle utilised daily in Earth measurement. Even if you're utilising it, you just don't expend the energy to square the circle. You have literal cognitive dissonance, two opposing views simultaneously held, mentally. One, that I can measure the ground flat and utilise a triangle to establish my position on the ground, and two, the ground's actually curving. Those two things are not congruent with one another.
Well, that was Bev's point several years ago, that the measurements that are made, people don't realise that they don't adhere to a sphere, right? If you're surveying whatever, none of these things adhere to a sphere. So people just pre-assume that if the measurement was bigger, it would be a sphere. It's like they pre-assume that they can bend horizontal, basically. That's why he came up with bendizontal, from arguing with blue marble science and all these kind of frauds. But the thing is that those people he was arguing with, they didn't want horizontal not to bend, yet they knew it couldn't. when he was talking about people measuring, he's not talking about, let's say, the people he was arguing with. He was talking about the surveyors and stuff who just turn up, do their job. They don't think about it, they just do it. Like my mother's partner, when I spoke about surveying with him, like he was totally great. Now I didn't bring up, even though he knows I'm a flat earther, he never brought up the topic with me, and I didn't bring up the term. I didn't use not once did I say, so the earth is flat to him or flat earth to him. While I was speaking with him about what he did, he told me exactly what he did. And I said, this. He agreed. He said, you already know all this, right? To the point where 2 different occasions, maybe 3, but at least 2, he said, I don't know why you were never a surveyor. You just understand all this stuff, right? No, but if I said, yeah, you do all those measurements, that's because the earth is flat, he'd want to start arguing with, right?
Yes.
Because I'm stepping on what he holds dear since childhood. Do you know what I mean? And he would have been the generation that would have seen the moon land, stuff like that, right? The 1969 event. So I'm interfering with a deeply held religious belief that he doesn't realize is a religious belief. But if I don't mention flat earth, and this is the thing about, this was Bev's direction, a lot of what he was trying to do at one time. I can't say about anymore because I don't know what he does these days. But at one time his direction was, he didn't talk about globe or flat, he just pointed out the measurements. They were what they were. But if you bring up flat earth, or say it's not a globe because of these measurements, you get an argument straight away. But they'll accept the measurements once you don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if it's an energy issue.
I've said the same thing about my sister. So when discussing her use of trig and circles of equal elevation and measuring stars with sextants, there's no discussion of, well, that means it's flat. It's just that is the discussion of how it's done. And there's an automatic carte blanche acceptance of how it is done because that is how it is done. So you're not going to argue, are you? You understand if it's measuring a flat baseline and calculating angles, that you're measuring a flat baseline and calculating angles. You're not going to argue with that, like you say, until you say, that's because Earth is flat, exactly as you just measured it. Then they want to brace against you and argue with you. Now, not my sister, it was actually her husband, but same difference.
Well, I could have a conversation with someone who's a pilot. It wouldn't matter if they're a commercial pilot or private pilot, right? It wouldn't matter what their level is. I could have a conversation with them and literally talk about the flight of the plane with them. And even I could even chat with them somewhat about the flight charts and all the waypoints that are on flights, because flight charts are full of waypoints and stuff like that. Because when you're flying, you want to know part of the way of how you know where you're going. If you can see the ground and the land, whatever, is waypoints. You know what I mean? You know that that's on your left, where it's supposed to be at whatever degree azimuth, and this other waypoint here is to your right at 90 degrees. Then you know you're on track, basically, right? Kind of like same happens with ships and sailing, right? Same kind of thing. They use waypoints, but the charts that they would use for aeronautical charts, they use waypoints. There's a loads of stuff on an nautical chart, on an aeronautical chart, and nautical, but on an aeronautical chart, what I'm referencing. I could have a conversation with someone about that and say, see this waypoint here. Well, that's actually 60 miles away from that one. This one here is 40 miles away from this one. And this one here is blah, blah miles away from that one. And if you put all that together, the whole area inside is like 250 miles, right? And they go, yeah. Right?
Well, and you don't have to add, you don't have to say, this is a horizontal distance measurement. It goes without saying. Yeah, it doesn't have to be explicitly stated, does it?
No, and I'd say so. I could say, like, or anyone could say it. I'm just saying, using me as I'm talking. So so you go this way, like horizontally to this and horizontally to that, or that to that would be horizontal. Yeah. And then as soon as I'd say, because the earth is flat, argument is likely to happen. Because you know what it is? The best thing they ever did, the absolute best thing they ever did, this was said first thing in 2015. is not teaching people the geometry of the globe, right? It just gave them a random radius, but no one had the geometry. So people think it's so big that it's okay to have a totally horizontal, that's an orientation, right, area of 250 square miles or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and that's why they want to argue with you. Because as soon as you point that out, they want to go, no, you don't understand, it's really big. And they want that. No, how many times do you hear it's so biggy, it's flat? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How many times do you hear that?
I'm going through it in lifetime. It's the wiring. The guy I'm working with, that's the way he's wired, man. It's too much data for him to take. So he'd rather shake his head and be like, so all of science is wrong. Not even realizing he's in a category error. Now I have to unpack what science is and what science isn't. It just gets very laborsome.
You just need one more piece of the puzzle, and that is a piece where shills prop up the flat earth narrative as being us telling ballers how earth gets measured as a sphere. If you can get the flatties to focus on, no, when you say it's so big it's flat, actually, you should be seeing a geometric sphere edge horizon at 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, summarised as being 8 inches per the mile squared. Then you're telling them how their religion actually works and reinforcing it. That's what we've had for 10 years. Flatties telling ballers how their ball works. Well, that's not very conducive with convincing them that it's exactly as measured. That's you telling them how they should argue for a ball. And that's what we've had flatties doing for 10 years.
Still doing it. I heard it the other night they're still doing it.
The typified example is we see too far. Too far based on a ball that you'll now disseminate to your opponent when you're trying to convince them that it's flat. And it's not required to convince them it's flat. They already know it's flat. That's how it's measured.
What I'd say, though, Nathan, is I still back up what. See, there's nuances here. The people we're dealing with are not your average person. Most of them are not. Most of them are, they're that extreme of the globe. Like, for every 10 people, right, that are shown that the earth is flat, two of them will become anti-flat earthers. You could say 8 of them won't become anti-flat earthers. 2 of them will become an anti-flat earthers, and 1 of them will get involved in the topic. Right? The other 7 will probably just go about their life. Right? And as you're saying, flat earthers are teaching the ballers about their geometry for the past whatever amount of years. Yeah, but if people were taught about that in school, that would be a very different situation. If you were taught about that when you were a kid, then they wouldn't have been able to BS you about this geometric horizon.
Right.
Right. They wouldn't have been able to do that. It's because they have been able to do that. And people are ignorant. Right. And when you point out something to them, let's say you're talking to anyone, that's pilot, surveyor, or whatever, right, navigator, and you point out something that's within what they do, and they get angry at you when you say because it's flat, right? They, like, even someone like them, who would understand the mathematics and geometry of a sphere with ease, even they want to come back at you with how it's really big. Because even though some of them, like surveyors, would know the geometry, but they didn't get it when it was important, right? Because if they got it when they're kids, they wouldn't be looking at the horizon going, there's that geometric edge that things sail over. They wouldn't be doing that. But because they didn't get it then and they learned it later, when you bring up to them that what they're doing proves the earth is flat, right? Or that only can be done because the earth is flat rather than proves it, straight away they go to really big. It's really big. It's so big it's flat, right? They want to go to that or whatever, some nonsense like that. They want to not address the geometry. So when they learn the geometry as an adult, they don't want to address it after at all. But if you taught it to them as a kid, they like, kids just accept what they see. And you tell them that horizon is X amount of distance away, and then suddenly it's at a different place than it was yesterday. They go, that's a load of rubbish. But an adult won't. An adult will start making up how there could be some kind of special single medium non-refraction. You know what I mean? Adults will come up with a heap of rubbish to make something real that a kid will just go, nah, that's rubbish.
Yeah, but it's
like,
weird. Sorry, go ahead. No,
I
I
was
was
just
just
going to
saying.
say, go on, you go, I'll say it in a second.
I was going to say it's weird because they know those buzzwords, though. Because I'm working with this guy, he's in his 70s. He's a carpenter. He knows all about measurements. And you're right. When you talk about measurements to him, he's going, well, you don't realize how big Earth is. That's the first thing. Then when you talk about the horizon, they automatically know refraction. Well, you're not accounting for, there is refraction. So they know all of these things, but they really don't know all these things. You know what I'm saying? They're saying it, but they don't even know what they're saying. Very
They have
weird.
the buzzwords. Yeah, exactly. They have the buzzwords. Yeah, that famous video of that kid standing with that girl, I think it was a little girl talking with her father, and they were looking at this rocket launch, NASA rocket
It's
launch.
coming back down again.
Obvious.
It's coming back down again. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
No, it's going off into orbital motion. No, it's not. It's going to crash. It's coming back down again.
Yeah, the adults just didn't want to accept it. The child just accepted what they saw. They had no skin in the game. Just like, no, that's not going anywhere. That's coming back down. That's just, the child was just stating what they were saying. The adult was trying to make up a heap of rubbish in their own head to try and convince them, and then somehow ad hoc convince the child. That's what adults do. Sometimes adults are more childish than children.
Yeah. And what do we get taught in geography? Do we get taught how to do mapping? How a map works? How the scale distance is horizontal? No, we don't get taught any of that. We get taught about how oxbow lakes are formed.
Yeah, how volcanoes come from the center of the
Yep,
earth.
that's where I was going next. Tectonic activity.
Yeah.
That's what you learn in geography. Who teaches you about actually how to use a map? Well, the church teach you if you're a Boy Scout or a Brownie. They're the ones who teach you. The church.
Well, I'd like to defend that. I mean, as when I was growing up as a very keen participant of my local Catholic church, our priests used to run orienteering classes.
Yep.
So we learned a lot about maps and using the compass and azimuths.
Yep, same here. I was a Boy Scout. Same for my children as Brownies and Rainbows, girl version. Where are they learning it? At the church. Who's teaching it them? Their pastor.
Yeah, it's funny that where you will get taught these things. You know what I mean? You think that would be something that everyone should be taught as they're growing up. In school, you should be taught how to use a map, how to orientate it, a map. You know what I mean? How to use a compass, azimuth. Because these aren't like things that are so difficult the child couldn't take them in. Children could take them in, no bother, just bring it in stages. Be simple. You could, it would be fun even. You could commit.
I remember it like I was yesterday. It was yesterday. Eleanor coming back with a plumb bob protractor. Say, look, Daddy, I can measure the stars for my latitude. Oh, really, Eleanor? That's fascinating. Did you learn this at Brownies? Yeah, they showed us and then we made one. Okay. So you as a 6-year-old understand that you're measuring Earth flat with an elevation angle to the star then? Oh, yeah. I was just showing how to do it with this angle measuring device I've made. All right. How lovely for you.
Well, I suppose it's hard for us in this arena to take on board how simple it is for someone to switch over from globe to flat and just go, okay, it's flat then, right? Because that is happening out there. That does happen. Because every day there's more and more flat earthers. And the reason is we're dealing with people who want to go into the minutiae of everything and be personal with us and everything they can do just to stop us no matter everything they can do just to get in our way. So from our, if we just use our experience in a vacuum, it would be like there's only 10 of us and 20 million crazy lunatics, because that's what it feels like. You know what I mean? But the people we've dealt with over the past 10 years, but the world out there is not like that. And that's one of the things I remember Bev used to say. These people are, he said it to me specifically on the phone one time. He said, these people, these anti-flat earthers, whatever, they're only a very small group of people. They're not this massive group that they give the impression to be, he said. He said, there's actually not as many of them as you think. And they are not who's out there in the world, he said. Out in the world, there's normal people. And he was right. Because out in the world, there is normal people. And they will argue with you. I like Neil is Neil, but you will run into people who will argue with you. But they're not going to, the chances are most people aren't going to go down the route of spending years arguing and debating with you, because they can't accept that horizontal is an orientation that can only happen if the earth is flat. Do you know what I mean? They can't accept that can't exist on the globe. Do you know what I mean? Other people will get to most people will get to a point where they go, yeah, that can't happen. Do you know what I mean? You know, one of their family members or something will have a word with them. Do you know what I mean? But no, the people we deal with, they can't do that. They're not able to allow that to happen.
Well, that comes back to
our experience with them. Go on.
That comes back to the mental expenditure that I was highlighting when you joined, which is to say that you say they can't do it. It's just they've got to square a circle, and that requires a certain degree of mental expenditure that they just don't want to spend. Like, they don't want to spend the mental energy squaring that circle.
I don't know. I think the people we deal with, I would say that's true for the people out in the world.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the. I'm not talking about the vocal majority. I'm not talking about the vocal minority that you and Bev were discussing, the anti-flat earthers, who I completely agree with you, by the way. There has to be a false impression created that they're in the majority, algorithmically. So, like, you do a search for flat earth debate, what do you find? 50,000 videos, none of which are mine, when I've made a couple of thousand videos on the subject under that title. Well, what do you find? You'll find me in other people's thumbnails. You'll find me being detracted in other people's videos. You'll see my name in the title of other people's videos, but every single one of them are from the same crowd, from the same 10 or 15 people.
Yeah, it's true, you know, that group that we deal with, they have expended the energy and they know, but they just don't want to accept, or they don't want to accept the truth for what it is, or they hate us for pointing it out, and they're hell bent on making our life, difficult, and our past difficult. You know, because some of them, it is down to that. They just have a hatred of us, and that's what drives them. You know what I mean? I think some of them.
Yeah.
Just as an example, someone came into my comments there in the past few days, and they left. The first comment I saw left by this person was an attack on me and my accent and whatever else. So I started labeling it kind of as racist and a racist attack, right? Because if they're going to start that nonsense, it's the first place there's someone that I don't know, some soccer account I don't know. So the first place that person is going to go to is attacking me on my accent, right? Then I'm going to go to the extreme. To hell with him. I'm going to call him a racist. I don't care, right? Because if that's their first go-to. Now, with other comments the same person left on other videos, they ended up getting into the debate with me a bit, right? But there's other ballers coming in trying to explain to me how the person wasn't really being racist, or, you know what I mean? And it's got into the point where they're kind of saying, well, being Irish doesn't mean that you're part of the Celtic race, because I said that means, like, if you're Irish or Celtic, right? As an origin I was referring to. But being Irish doesn't mean, because like their point was, you could be Asian and be Irish or whatever. No, this kind of thing, right? Like, and it's anything but accept that what the person did, very first thing, was come in and instead of just dealing with whatever was in the video, the first thing they did would have, well, and it would have a personal go at me, right? So instead of accepting that this person on their side came in, I never spoke to the person before, and the first thing they did was personally attack me, right, on how I speak. Instead of accepting that, they're trying to gaslight me into thinking that it was only a bit of fun. Only a bit of fun. If Neil does it to me, it's only a bit of fun because Neil is my friend. But this nobody who is obviously my enemy, right, coming in attacking me on my accent, that is not just a bit of fun. That is somebody who doesn't want to deal with what's in whatever video they're looking at that I've made and just wants to have a go at me because they hate me. You know, and I'm okay with that, but don't pretend that it's something it's not. You know what I mean? You can hate me if you want, but don't be pretending that it was just a bit of fun when it was obviously hate. You know, so instead of just accepting the people on their side, just accepting that this person's behavior was just wrong from the get-go, they want to try and gaslight me into believing that that person didn't mean that by it. As opposed to just accepting that's not, you know, just if the person had just come in and just, you know, had a go at me concerning what's in the video and tried to debate with me or something, yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But if someone's going to just instantly start off with hatred, like other people have debated with me and then it goes to the hatred of it, right? But this person came in with instant hate. And it's like, no, I'm not putting up with that. You don't just get to just turn up on one of my videos and just personally attack me. Do you know what I mean? To that degree, you know, to where it becomes racial, where that means you really hate me. Like, I'm not putting up with that. But that is the kind of rubbish that we deal with. Like, as opposed to then dealing with the argument and accepting what's true, they want to do anything but that. It's anything but the actual argument. Anything but the actual measurement. Anything. That's what it seems is the situation with these people.
When it comes to them responding to the actual measurements, as you put it, they haven't got a response. They have to somehow try and gaslight their own audience into accepting and understanding that it is okay to measure it flat. And like we've come full circle now. It's like, because it's a really big ball? Well, not according to your own rhetoric, but in terms of the actual measurements, it doesn't matter how many excuses they make. They still have to accept that it has to be measured flat. Because it is, and always was.
Yes. You know, that's just the truth.
Yeah, so
but
what are they going to do?
They don't want to accept it.
Yeah, they want to accept it, but they want to also simultaneously accept that that doesn't mean it's flat. Oh, right, so because we measure it flat, you just expect me to accept that that means it's flat? That's literally what we've heard recently from people like Dave McKeegan and Simon Dan. Well, Nathan says just because we measure it flat, that means Earth's flat. Yeah, that's exactly what it means. But that was their defence.
Yeah, what was the Simon that said? We don't only measure it flat.
That's a lie.
Do you know what I mean?
But that's a lie, isn't it?
Yeah,
so he's lying.
It is.
He's lying when he tries to defend it by saying, well, we don't only measure it flat. So you want your tacit acceptance that you do, as you described, measure it flat, but simultaneously tell me by way of lying that that's not the only way measuring it is done. Well, no, that is the only way that measuring Earth is done. There's no exceptions. Calling it local doesn't change how over 100 miles, if you can see that far and measure that far, you'll still be measuring it flat. Now, calling it local doesn't mean that if you go up to 200 miles where you can't see that far, suddenly you measure it. You don't measure it at all if you can't see it to measure it. So you're only ever measuring it locally, and we only ever measure it flat. So you just have to lie and infer that there's a different way of measuring it. And there isn't. Horizontal distances are always employed.
Well, local is as far as you can see. If
Exactly.
you're up on a high mountain, local is whatever distance you can see. That's what local is. They want local to be your kitchen floor. Home Depot, Jaron.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Jardo, Click OK, Brian's Logic, Neil, Wandek, and a whole bunch of people in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server, so welcome one and all.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, good to be here.
You were just talking there
right.
about. Sorry.
Sorry, mate, go on. You go for it, Brian. Yeah.
Thanks, Monday. We were just talking about measurements and all that, as we often do in the pre-show and that. Like, if we want to go into the truth, the mere existence of angular size measurement with distance, like the mere existence of that means that the Earth is flat. Besides the fact that they don't have perspective on the globe side, the point being is that that's a vertical height above horizontal plane of reference. And as I pointed out many times with the example I used with Mount Everest, if you're measuring the angular height of Mount Everest from Kathmandu Valley, which is close on 100 miles away, that angular height that you get, angular size you get, using the distance between Kathmandu Valley and Mount Everest, that angular size will match the remaining actual height of Mount Everest above the elevation of Kathmandu Valley. That can only happen and would only work if mean sea level is a horizontal plane of reference, so the Earth is flat. Do you know what I mean? And the same is true for many things in aviation and other things in surveying and also navigation. It's like these things, like the fact that they exist at all is the proof. Do you know what I mean? Outright proof, because these are things we can use in reality. These aren't just calculations that we can add after the fact. These are the facts.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
You know who found that out to his detriment?
Go on.
Conspiracy cats. Quote, "I'll give you a flat Earth for that," end quote, when utilising angular measurements over horizontal distances. You can only measure Earth flat. Now, Conspiracy Cat shortly after gave up his channel to MC Toon. and relinquished his involvement in Flat Earth at all based on having to concede to a utilisation of a flat Earth only linear distance for angular size. I'll just quote him again. I'll give you a flat Earth for that. And that's because that's the only way it can function. Conspiracy Cats, now MC Toon's channel.
You know, when you said it, I just couldn't. I said, oh, I was going, is it Jeremy? Is it Bob Nodell? I was thinking, who is he thinking of? Of course, Conspiracy Cats. The same is true for Simon Dan, isn't it, at present?
Well, would you want me to give you a different quote? We don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, Simon Dan. Well, so you understand that we measure Earth flat then? Well, yes, of course he does. He's gone through and conceded to my acknowledgement of linear distance, horizontal measurements and prerequisite flat Earth elevation angles, and the video that Simon Dan's playing. And he says, well, yeah, of course, we do measure Earth flat at the local scale. Like, we can only measure locally. Whatever you can see and measure is your local measurement. If you can't see it to measure it, that would be not local, then you can't measure it. But all measurements without exception, as conceded to by Simon Dan, are flat. Now, there's a slow, maybe, upturn in understanding from our anti-flat Earth brethren that they must utilise flat planes and flat measurements, because that's how Earth's measured. Now, it's never had the squaring of the circle given to them in their education process. They've never had an excuse given to them for why all measurements of Earth are flat, but all measurements of Earth are flat. So when they go and look into how Earth gets measured, first you get the Earth gets measured flat bit, and then you get the because it's a really big ball afterwards. And they just parrot it. So they say, yes, we don't only measure Earth flat, but the flat Earth bit that we do measure locally is because it's a really big ball. Now that makes absolutely no sense, but to them, because it's written down in Wikipedia, suddenly that makes it make sense to them, even though it makes no sense in terms of measurement. What are the measurements? Well, of a flat Earth, of course. That's how it was, is, and always will be measured. Because Earth is flat. Exactly as it's measured. As conceded to by every single flat Earth opponent when they actually look at the measurements of Earth. Horizontal distances, rise over run, elevation angles, straight and level flight, sea level, elevation in general. All of these things are flat Earth only measurements. Nothing's going to change that. The fact that there's been a religious belief given to them from their Christian churches here in England doesn't change how Earth gets measured. Adding on that, well, it can be measured flat because we're on a really big ball is just an affirmation of their own cognitive dissonance. Doesn't change how Earth gets measured. It's flat.
I was in a discussion with a baller the other day, and just back and forth with the elevation angle and celestial navigation discussions we have on here and all that. And it came to the point where the globe believer had to tell me that an elevation angle can be obtained from a curved baseline as long as it's only a slight curve. That was his very words.
Yeah, in their mind, there's a prerequisite being violated because it's only a little bit violated. So what if your elevation angle isn't straight, it's just a little bit bent, then it's no longer an angle. It is that simple. It's either an angle or it isn't. Now in their mind, it's just a little bit of bend. No, it isn't, because it's not an angle. Again, this is so common, One Deck, that we have defined this as the rock and the hard place. The rock is you accept, like, I don't know, Fugly Dave McKeegan measuring elevation angles in Antarctica for a 24-hour period. If his tripod hadn't got the better of him and outsmarted him, he'd have done it for a full 24 hours. But for the fact that Dave's very stupid and couldn't cope with a tripod, what he did cope with was measuring elevation angles. That's what he measured. There's no disputing what he measured. There's a little number with a degree symbol after what he measured. Now, if you say, oh, well, that's only because it's a little bit bent, well, then it's a little bit not an angle anymore. That would be the hard place. A denial of your own measurements, because suddenly they're not angles anymore. Oh, well, yeah, they are angles. Well, then you're measuring Earth flat. Again, it goes without saying, You're the one putting a little degree symbol after something that represents two straight lines meeting at a vertex when you measure Earth for 24 hours. Unless you're really stupid like Dave McKeegan, you can't wrap your head around your own equipment. You know, other than the dunces like Dave McKeegan, people who do measure Earth flat for the full 24 hours in Antarctica understand implicitly, like MC Toon, when he's waving around his flat Earth measurements at Brian in debate. Like he's somehow got a win because he's measured Earth flat for 24 hours with little degree symbols after prerequisite flat Earth elevation angles taken from surface level. These are their measurements. They don't have to like it.
I remember just on one Dex point, I made a video a couple of years ago now because I heard Charles Glover Matt on Bev's show talking to Bev saying that you can measure an angle off of a curve in GeoGebra once it's only a small distance, right, the adjacent, right? And I knew that was a load of rubbish, right? And I went and I made a video and I showed, and I made a circle of radius 3,959 miles, and I brought it down the distance between 2 points as small as I could make it, and GeoGebra still had to add in a straight line. There was never a point where GeoGebra was ever going to accept this what would look almost like it's completely flat to the naked eye. The GeoGebra was never going to accept that as not being curved because it's part of a circle, part of a sphere, let's just say, in their paradigm. Point being is that I had to make this video, right, because this guy was going around talking rubbish.
You mean lying?
And yeah, and afterwards, he said, one of the things he said he was going to do was contact GeoGebra about it, the company.
You say, so what you're saying is this, in defiance of the computer's refusal to violate an axiomatic principle, this religious believer in curves forming angles said, I will approach this system developer and tell them to make their system violate an axiom so that it fits in with my religious belief. Correct?
Yes.
Shout out to Jardo. Says Tripod Dave. Yeah, that would be one of my panel members laughing at Dave's inability to cope with using a tripod. Failing miserably in what was suggested to be a once-in-a-lifetime trip, possibly to Telly's, in a tent somewhere, possibly on Antarctica. Either way, a flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle was made for a full 24-hour period. Other than Dave McKeegan, who's too damn stupid to use a tripod. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for the super chat, Jardo. Really appreciate the support.
It's a tripod,
Yeah.
Nathan, not a tripod.
A twipod. Yeah, Dave couldn't cope with his own twipod.
Yeah, well, in the video I made, I showed in CAD and in GeoGebra where none of them will accept, because all I had to do was show what's his name's Robert. Remember what's his name? He made the CAD thing for celestial navigation. Here he's often showing.
Oh yeah,
Rob Durham. Yeah, Rob Durham. I just had to show that because one half of what was selected was not a line, right? Because CAD wouldn't recognize the curve as a line, right? GeoGebra wouldn't recognize the curve as a straight line, right? None of them would. So, Charles Glover Matt, his go-to was he was going to contact GeoGebra. It's like, are you crazy? You know what I mean? You're going to contact GeoGebra to try and get them to change reality within their program, their application, so you can sleep easier at night.
They would sooner see bloody buildings fall down than concede that Earth is being measured flat, basically. Yeah, I don't mind if any tools that are used in terms of surveying, measuring, utilisation of maps, charts, any of this stuff. Bend it all! Let the world burn. That's their attitude. Rather than defy their own religious belief that they're on a sphere, they'd rather have axioms bent. I mean, it's literally come to the point where they'll tell people who are making programs to violate axioms than concede that Earth isn't being measured spherically. Because it can't be. We're utilising angles and horizontal distances.
Well, if you think about, let's look at Jaron's Home Depot, right? If we were on a sphere, how would you build Home Depot if you were trying to treat the surface of the floor as a tangent?
You
It
don't.
would mean that...
It means that
Well,
you're
see,
building
this is-
out to a
yeah.
line out in space as opposed to on the surface.
Well, it's worse even than that, because if you treat the center of the Home Depot as the very center of the Home Depot, let's just say it's a square, right? Big square. And that very point in the center is touching the sphere at one point, so that makes the whole concrete floor, right, a tangent plane. How are you determining, right, the level throughout that floor?
You can't. You first need an
You can.
axiomatic horizontal plane of reference to reference your horizontal width. So you can't.
Exactly, because when they're trying to claim ridiculously that level is an equidistant distance from from a central point of the central point of a sphere, that's not going to work for a Home Depot. You wouldn't even be able to build a Home Depot. Never mind that bigger, simply because either corner of that Home Depot will not be an equally distant, from the center of the globe, and the zeniths at those four corners will have to be parallel to each other. But that's not going to work in any way, shape, or form. So none of it can work. If we're on a globe, none of that could work. There is no way to level the floor. Do you know what I mean? There's no way to build a road or a railway. It's just not possible. You just don't have mean sea level as a horizontal. It's not there. Their sea level is a curve. You can't determine elevations. You can't determine level. Nothing is determinable, if that's a real word.
I think
made
we
it
should
up.
just rewrite all geometry, and rather than having axiomatic principles like all verticals being parallel, all horizontals being parallel, just get rid of parallel. And then everything will be cushy and the religion of a ball can stand. I mean, we don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, Simon Dan.
It's funny
We
you
do.
should bring up parallel, because I was having a bit of a thing earlier with a baller on one of my comment on one of my videos, who were trying to say that curves can be parallel, right?
No.
I said, right. Well, this is the thing. The initial search on Google will tell you a curve can be parallel to another curve, whereas it can be equally distant from the other curve, but it won't be parallel, right? But when you actually search it correctly in actual geometry, it'll give you only straight lines or planes. Now, two circles can be parallel, but not the curved part, the planar part of the circle, right? So you can have two circles, one above the other or next to each other, and the planar parts of those circles, because they're two-dimensional, they will be parallel to each other because they're flat, right? But the curved parts on the outside, they're not parallel. They might be equidistant from each other, but they won't be parallel. Yeah, and other than that, you can have concentric circles, but that's not parallel. But you have AI out there trying to say, yeah, you can have parallel curves. It's like, no, you can't.
Yeah. Well, this is the point
So,
where, in the
Brian,
same way,
when
if you...
you-
Sorry, just one sec, one deck. If you have AI running the show when it comes to building things, that is when we'll have buildings collapsing, in the same way as court cases collapse because AI just makes stuff up to suit the person that's asking it to fulfill a task. Oh, well, I need there to be a case law that says that Danny Masterson's harassment of the witnesses is perfectly acceptable. Here's a case where that was shown. You just made it up, did you, AI? So you've essentially destroyed this case? Well, that will be what happens to the buildings when suddenly axiomatic principles of all horizontals running parallel with the plane of the horizon stops being the case because curves can be parallel, says AI. Yeah, see how quickly your building falls over.
Exactly.
I'm just going to point out, like, about the parallel. If you take them to their Earth curve calculator and look at the eye level and surface level being parallel with each other, neither of them are curved.
What's better?
No.
Sorry, I was off mute. I was talking to one of the cats. He fully heard me.
Well, the cat heard you. Did you want to repeat it?
Nah, it was like Neil the other day with, here boy, here boy, here boy. It would have been like that.
Yeah, so in the pre-show we were covering, I did a proper plug for Ali. I keep wanting to call her McFreedom, and it's not McFreedom. I've forgotten her name. What's she called? Ali
Forever, or something?
McForever. And I played through that video to reiterate how cognitively expensive it is to square circles, where you have a cognitive bias towards the sphericity of the surface. You can simultaneously measure it flat and hold true to a belief until someone comes along and puts the two together. So Brian and I were pointing out how with various family members we can discuss how axiomatically flat Earth gets measured, surveyed, charted, navigated, and there'll be no argument until you draw a conclusion that defies their religious belief. Until you say, yeah, we're measuring horizontal distances across the surface of the plane of Earth because Earth is flat. Well, before you say that final statement, there's a prerequisite. It kind of goes without saying when you're describing measuring a horizontal distance or an elevation angle. It can only be flat. That's what an elevation angle is. Elevation is from the surface. That's what elevation means. Angle means two straight lines. So you don't have to say, well, that's because the surface is flat. It's part of an axiom utilised when you describe the word angle in measurement context. So you're going beyond and above what is required when you redundantly state that that means the surface must be flat. That's redundant. But in adding that redundant statement, it causes controversy because it highlights the glaring contradiction of the, up until that point, ball believer, because he hasn't suddenly got the glaring cognitive dissonance to have to cope with and mentally process. That can be kept separate. Yeah, we measure Earth flat with elevation angles, like this angle on screen, called an altitude angle to the sun, off a plane, with two straight lines, one being the surface, because it's an altitude angle, otherwise known as elevation angle. It can't not be the surface. It's an altitude angle. But do I have to say it's got to be the surface? Well, the clue's in the title. It's describing altitude or elevation. That's not from some tangent out in space. It's off the surface. It's part of the title. I don't have to highlight it. But when I do, because we're living in a world where people think they're on a ball and they think that this line along the surface is actually bending. So they'll tell you, well, we can still form an angle and bend this line. No, you can't. It won't be an angle anymore. Again, we define this in the pre-show. It's part of our definition of your problem when you can't cope with your own measurement of a flat Earth. When you say, well, it's bending. Well, then it's not an angle anymore. It's not a measurement. So you haven't got a little degree symbol you can put after a number because it's formed with a straight line off the surface for it to be called an altitude angle. You don't want that to be an altitude angle anymore. You don't want it to be an angle. You want part of the line to be curved. Well, that's not an angle. You haven't got a measurement anymore. What you want to simultaneously accept that it's a flat Earth prerequisite and only can be measured off a flat surface, but because it's a really big ball. No, that still means that you're jeopardising the actual functionality of the angle that you've just measured off the surface with a little degree symbol that means it can only be a straight line on the surface. Again, I don't have to highlight that that means Earth is flat. It's part of the function of the measurement. But in so doing, suddenly I can be shoved to the bottom of the lists, have all my videos removed from any searches, and be trodden and diminished by all of our anti-flat Earth opponents who will say something similar, which is, oh, well, you don't only measure Earth flat. Yes, we do measure Earth flat with linear horizontal distances, but that's only on a small scale because we're on a really big ball. When they literally verbally state the cognitive dissonance they're experiencing, they can be promoted by the algorithm.
The diagram you have on screen now, and the one you had on a moment ago with the sun, they're very misleading because they're giving you this impression that the sky is curved. Because you can see it there, the celestial sphere is written on that. Now, it's a dome, it's all you ever, but they're giving the impression that the sky is curved. And they're placing you at like that little black dot. Really, that little black dot there would be the globe, and you're in the center of that. That's what.
Yes, that's correct.
Elite.
Correct.
You're not.
Yeah, exactly. You've got it. Just let me point out so the audience can see it before it disappears off screen. You've got 0 degrees, and it's gone. 180 degrees on the other side. Well, that's because what you're actually showing is a glorified protractor, and we covered this on Wednesday's show. The sky must be flat for that to functionally work. The ground must be flat and parallel with the sky for you to measure it through a protractor view. But the view that they present is a dome. It's like, no, that would be the protractor that you're using to measure the flat sky and flat ground parallel with one another. They can only be parallel with one another. Again, in this diagram, it's got 180 and 0. 180, 0. Curve overview isn't the curved sky. The sky isn't curved. Now, this particular diagram isn't even referencing visual anything. This is an auditory representation. If you look where the triangle terminates, it's at the guy's ear because it's describing the same thing, but for audio. You still use a plane of reference and you can still describe it with a visual 180 to 0. That's a protractor.
Well, what's good about this is this actually kind of says it all, because if we were to put this into their paradigm, that person's head, that head there would be the globe, and around him would be the celestial sphere. Whereas the reason, like that is very apt, even though it's not for that, even though it's to do with audio, it's very apt because the globe only does exist in someone's mind. Do you know what I mean? That's the only place it exists as a concept in people's minds. Like, but the whole, at least in that they have an actual right triangle. Whereas on the other diagrams, they had 2 straight lines meeting a curve. That's not an elevation angle. You don't have a curved vertical height. There is no curved height. Height, even if it's off the surface of a sphere, mathematically, is still a straight line. But they're trying to, with a lot of these diagrams, is to infer an angular height, but not turn it into an actual vertical real world height or a vertical. They're trying to infer an angular height without the vertical. But the vertical is the height, because whether it's the height of a mountain or it's the angle to a celestial body, it's the vertical. It's like elevation or altitude is vertical, is a vertical straight line. It isn't a curve as they were trying to show on those 2 diagrams. If you know what I mean, there's no curved altitude or curved elevation. The elevation is a straight line. The altitude is a straight line above the surface. You know, that's what it is. So them trying to show it as a curve is very misleading. Very misleading.
Well, misleading because axiomatically they also will always require surface level and eye level be parallel with one another. Like on this diagram on screen, even when you're inferring there's a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon marked with S in this diagram, you still need to acquire H off the surface level, H being the height. So H is acquired with a parallel eye level once acquired. Parallel with what? Well, the surface level you measured the height off. In terms of the mathematical function being performed to derive the dip angle measurement to a point that hijacks perspective in the distance in an orthographic mathematics, you still require the principle of parallel holds true. You still require surface level to be level, and you still require eye level be parallel with it. Even when you think you're describing a curving surface, surface level is still flat, or you won't measure your height from it, or your eye level won't be parallel with it, or your dip angle functionality won't function anymore. Earth is even flat when you're suggesting sphericity.
So what you're saying, Nathan, is sorry, Bray.
Oh, go ahead, Warren.
Just saying what Nathan's saying is when they start to say that surface level isn't level and we're not using horizontal and parallel, then this is their globe Earth calculator. If they're denying all this, then they have no measurements.
Yes, correct. So nicely summarised. Again, I did it about 5 minutes ago, but I'll do it again. The hard place has just been summarised by one deck. What's that you say? The surface level curves? Oh, really? So this surface level required to be parallel with eye level in your own mathematics is curving? Oh, well, then this maths absolutely fails completely, abysmally. It won't work anymore. You require surface level to be parallel with eye level or your maths fails. But you want to bend it? That's called the hard place, where you don't have any measurements anymore, because they all fail when you start denying the axioms they rely upon. And what's that? You want to accept surface levels flat and eye levels parallel? Welcome to flat Earth. We call that the rock, where you first accept that you will and can only measure Earth flat in order for you to believe you're on a ball. Well, you're not. You've just measured Earth flat, and it must always be measured flat. It was always measured flat, is being measured flat for you in your Earth curve maths, and will always be measured flat in future when we build it, survey it, map it, chart it, sail on it, fly over it. Earth's flat. That's how it's measured. Nothing's ever going to change that, and nothing ever has changed it. Again, this also answers the question, well, what difference does it make to life? None. Whether or not you believed, past tense, you were on a ball didn't alter how Earth was functioning, and had been functioning up until this point. You just had a religious belief that you were standing on a curved surface we all measured flat. Don't believe me? Go and check any measurement of Earth. Go and look at how we fly over Earth. Go and look how we sail on Earth, how we've scaled Earth and mapped Earth and charted Earth. It's all flat. There are no exceptions. And when someone like Dan lies to you and says we don't only measure Earth flat, he's just a liar. We only measure Earth flat. There are no exceptions. And you would require it to be so to believe you're on a ball. Now, your ball belief does not supersede or undermine any of the Earth measurements that we have always been using. So nothing changes. Just your dumbass globe belief would be relinquished. Nothing about Earth and its measurements would change. It was, is, and always will be measured flat. That's because Earth's flat. Shocking, isn't it? Suppress him immediately!
Well, I went in hard on the dip correction some years back, because I have to admit, not that I was wrong to make the videos I made on it, because that's what, if they were wrong, I would take them down. They were right. But the problem is, with the dip correction, which is like between surface level and eye level, you've got to infer a point out on that surface level is like where the horizon is an
below.
Actual place.
Yeah, you've got to infer it's below. Below the surface level is, you've got to infer a physical geometric sphere for a horizon below the surface level.
No. I'm talking about to do the dip correction, because you're not referring to a globe's geometric edge when you do the dip correction.
Oh, okay.
Right, because this is the thing. They try and make their 7/6R be close to the mathematics that fit the dip correction. And they're very close to it. Not exactly the same, but close to it, right? There's a small differential in it. But the thing is, what the dip correction, I remember listening when I went search further into it. I heard this, listened to this, I think it was a Turkish ship's captain saying the dip correction is the most untrustworthy correction in celestial navigation, he said. And it made sense to me that he would say that, because you've got to pre-assume that the horizon you're using is a certain distance away from you based off of your eye height. Now, your eye height will not give you a distance to the horizon. The horizon is not, because if it did, the horizon, then that would be a geometric point. But the horizon is not geometric, right? It's not geometric for a globe or for a flat Earth. It's not a geometric. So when you taking an angle between the horizon, you're using the horizon and between that and the celestial body, and you then infer that this horizon is at a certain distance away from you because you're 25 feet above the water or whatever, you have nothing to base that on. that horizon, what I mean is that like will mess up your angle. That'll give you a small differential every time, where it's every time, unless you're by pure chance. Like what I mean is that it's never workable. Technically, the dip correction is never workable. Never. Because the horizon is never going to fit what you want it to fit. So when you subtract that little bit from your angle, just a second. When you subtract that little bit from your angle, you're actually you're hoping that you end up with a horizontal line at the eyes when you don't. You know what I mean? You're not ending up. You end up with something most of the time, and I mean 90% of the time at least, if not more, where the line is slightly dipped below horizontal or slightly above horizontal, and that's where your angle is never totally correct. That's one of the reasons they bring in sight reduction. So the dip correction is really, even though it is between surface level and eye level, you have to pre-assume a load of stuff that's not real to make it work. Just wanted to throw that in there because of that surface level and eye level thing. Sorry, one day, you're trying to say something, was it?
Yeah, that's what the bowler who told me that the elevation angle can be acquired off a slightly curved baseline was trying to push me down that road the other day or night, whenever it was. We were talking about the dip correction. He was trying to ask me he wanted me to give him a distance to the horizon and the formula. I didn't go down that road. I've shown in the almanac where it's obviously states that the dip correction is the height of eye above sea level. And I wouldn't budge off that. It's written in the almanac. It tells you what it is. And there's a calculation that you do depending on your eye height above sea level. And that's where I kept it. Because that's what you're doing. You get your eye height above surface level. But he was going to go down that road, Brian. That's where he was trying to push. So there is something in there, like you say, and they try and wriggle around that and try and make it seem like the Earth is a globe, even though we're measuring it flat and horizontal.
Yeah, because that correction, it won't fit a globe Earth, but because of how the correction is done, it preassumes that the horizon is a particular distance away because you're at 25 foot high, right? Now, the problem with that is this, right? The horizon is something that doesn't stay in one place. It can appear closer to you now, depending on if you have a demarcation point, and further away later on, just because of a change in the weather. You don't change that, and you're on the same height above the water. You don't have any special optics, just your eyes. And the weather changes, and suddenly the horizon appears closer to you or suddenly further away from you than it did earlier on in the day. The point, especially when you're out, and if you're out at sea, like you will notice when there's a good clarity comes in, you will notice that the horizon can appear very far away from you when you're out on the water. But you have no idea, like that's only an apparent position. You have no idea, like it's not so much I'm wrong to say you have no idea. I'm going to say you have no idea how far away it is. It doesn't have a distance, but they give it a distance with the dip correction. And that's the problem. You can't give it a distance. So they have to make up a distance based off of an eye height that doesn't exist for the dip correction. Maybe they had no choice, because you'd have to figure out how you would do the dip correction otherwise. How you would subtract it otherwise. I would have thought it would be easier to subtract. See, I would have thought it would be easier to subtract the eye height above the water as opposed to bringing the line from the horizon up to the eye, bringing the eye down to the water. But the problem is that your angle is between the horizon and the celestial body. And without going into too much of the minutiae of it, it's a bit of a fraud, right? The dip question, it is a fraud. Because what is the horizon? It's just an optical phenomenon. It's not a geometric point. So how can you give it a distance? Can't. No matter what
Brian, it's where the boats go over, proving that it's the curvature of Earth.
But they don't. Even in their own mathematics, that doesn't happen. That's the point. When Nathan came in earlier, what he was saying was correct concerning their position. Their geometric edge only exists in the maths below surface level. So boats don't even do that in their paradigm.
Yeah. It's funny though, because I'm working with this guy, and that's what he told me. So this is getting around, and people are learning the phrases to say. Like that's what he said. What about when the boats disappear? They got to be going over a curve. Well, how can you explain it? It's like, wow, these answers are just like, it's like it's built in them. They did a great job promoting heliocentrism.
But see, people, this is the thing, is the horizon. Think about what's the horizon? It's a horizontal line. And they tried to say it was the edge of the globe. You know what I mean? It's a gaslight from word go. They're gaslighting you from the moment that you come into the world about this globe. They're gaslighting you. Or see that straight horizontal line out there that we use, right? That line that we use, right? As a reference for the orientation of horizontal, that's actually the curved edge of a globe. You know what I mean? You know,
That's a good one.
Yeah, but
because-
when I break that down, they immediately say, then if it's flat, how come we can't get to the edge? I'm sure somebody could take a boat to the edge. It's like very frustrating, man. Very frustrating.
So, yeah, what you're saying is they immediately take you to a straw man.
That's correct.
Yeah. So they can give you a bit of a false equivalence and ask you to prove where something that has no bearing on axiomatic principles like horizontal and parallel, it has no bearing on it. But where's your edge? What the hell's that got to do with how we measured Earth and how you will require it to be measured? Suddenly I've got to prove that there's an edge. Where's the dome? I didn't even mention it. What are you talking about? What dome? Well, if there's flatness, then there must be a dome. How big? Where's your map? What are you talking about? I'm not a cartographer. I'm a YouTuber. What are you talking about? What map? Well, if it's flat, you've got to have an accurate map. Well, all of them are flat. Yeah, because they come from globes. You're like, what? Why are we having this conversation?
Yeah.
You need it to be flat. It's axiomatic in your measurements. I've pointed that out, and suddenly I've got to justify where a map is and become a cartographer to have pointed this out to you. No, I don't.
Like the guy the other night, the same guy was trying to. He was telling the people who were in the room that I stated that celestial navigation was triangulation, which I never, and then tried to twist it round for me to give him a height to the luminary. That's what he was trying. He didn't succeed in that, by the way, but that's where he was trying to go with it all. This is what they do.
Yeah, that like stupid stuff like that, right? A height to the luminary. Now I've had to have that out and out with them, right? But I even made a video asking them to produce the height of the luminary using the way process they're asking me to produce it with, and none of them will take up the challenge. Right?
It's only fun when you're being the victim of a straw man, Brian. It's no fun when they're victim of their own straw man. Oh, right. Well, what's the height of the stars then? Oh, well, in your world, baller, you can have it infinite, can you? Why? Because you've put yourself inside a giant protractor you call the globe and then wrap the celestial sphere around that, and therefore you can't assert any distance, but you want me to give you the star distance when we point out that it's measured flat. Oh, yeah, seems totally reasonable.
Yeah, and even within their position, I mean, they must claim infinite distances because they require the parallel light, right? For them to infer the sphere that will be over their heads, not what they're standing on, right? But when they don't have to do that, they're giving you distances to these things. It's like, hang on a minute, how can Polaris have a distance now, but when you need to go to celestial navigation, you need to claim that it's an infinite distance away, which is a complete oxymoron. You can't have an infinite distance. It's not a distance. A distance is finite. Infinite is a joke as well. Doesn't exist in mathematics. You know, it doesn't exist in reality or mathematics. You know, what kind of a concept is infinite? You know, in the world we live in, it's a joke. Yeah. So, but this thing, go on, Wonder.
Sorry, I'm just agreeing with you, Brian. This is what they try and do. We want the height of the luminary. We're talking about celestial navigation. We're not interested in that. It's nothing to do with celestial navigation. We don't need the height of the luminary to find our position on the surface of Earth. All we're interested in is the distance.
That's not the answer. The answer is the luminary doesn't have a height. The luminary doesn't behave in a geometric manner for you to measure an actual height to it. You don't even know what it is. That's the truth. See, the problem is, we don't. One second. Right, give me a second. Many times we said to our opposition, we're not measuring the height of the luminary in celestial navigation. No, it's not that we're not measuring the height if we're using celestial navigation. It's not that they're not. Well, I'm not doing it, but people who do it. It's not that they're not measuring the height to the celestial body. Yeah, that's true, they're not. But there is no way to measure the height of the thing, because how can you measure the height of something when you can rise 6 miles up in the air and get the same exact angle to the same exact celestial body, right, over the same point on Earth at the same time? That means that there is no height to the things. If they work on the sea surface from a mountain or in an airplane, from the same latitude, the person will get the same angle north of the equator, angle to Polaris, from either of those 3 elevations. The top of the mountain, the sea level, and the airplane. You can't measure a height to them. They don't behave like terrestrial objects. They don't have a consistent geometric location. You can't do it. And that's why I made the video, asking them to do it. You do it. You show me how you get the height of them with your triangle. Right? And you prove that is the height of it. None of them would take it up. None of them would take on the challenge, because they knew it's not possible. So they know when they're asking you that, they're asking you to prove an impossibility, something that they know can't be done.
Yeah, it's like, you can take several different angular measurements to the sun throughout the day. Does that give the sun several different heights above the surface of sea level throughout the day? No, it doesn't. You're correct, Brian. It's got nothing to do with that in celestial navigation. We don't know the height of the luminaries. We don't know what they are. We're working with sea level, navigating the surface of Earth.
That's profound, Brian. I didn't realize that. You're right. So they ask, and that's the answer. We're giving them the answer they want, right? Instead of giving them the proper answer. They know.
Of course they know, which is why they must make them infinite for them. They know that because within my video, I pointed out that for them to do celestial navigation, they must measure off a tangent, which is an impossibility, but for them mathematically, right? And then move that tangent to their equatorial plane, right? Or they can measure from an airplane and move it then mathematically to their equatorial plane. How can they move that angle up and down if the celestial body didn't follow it? Do you know what I mean? The point being is that how can someone straight above me, 6 miles above me, take an angle to the same celestial body at the same exact time and get the same angle and us be able to measure the height of this? It's not possible. It's like trying to measure the top of a door frame that keeps going up as you raise up. Can't be done. Like, we treat them as 2 parallel planes, the Earth and the sky, when we're doing the measurements, right? But that plane above us, that say changes its apparent height in relation to, that's why we measure it with angles, because angles aren't actual height.
But that's where you get
an angular.
That's where you get brilliant lines from people like Simon Dunn and Dave McKeegan, where they'll say things like, well, Nathan Oakley says, because we measure Earth flat, that means Earth's flat. What kind of an idiot thinks just because we're measuring it flat, that means it's flat? That's what you'll get as a response.
Yeah. But this is what a lot of people aren't taking on board, right? Because they're straw man so much by the borders. If I take an angular size of a mountain at a distance, right? And I just take the angle, right, from where I stand to the top of the mountain, and that angle is, 35 degrees. Then I turn to my right, 190 degrees, and I take an angle above the horizon or whatever, or with the horizontal. Let's say just use a theodolite. Take the angle from where I stand to the top of the mountain, 35 degrees. turn 90 degrees, right, and take an angle from that same horizontal, just turned around the light 90 degrees, take an angle to a celestial body, two elevation angles, right, vertical heights above the same horizontal plane, right, both 35 degrees, right. The only reason I can turn that angle into an actual height for the mountain is because the mountain does have an actual geometric position that's constant, right? And terrestrially, we've figured out how to turn an angular size at a distance into an actual size, right? Or if we know the actual size, we can turn it into a distance. But we'll just work off of the distance giving us the actual size. We can't do that with celestial bodies. But I can get the same exact angle to the top of a mountain as I can the celestial body, right? The angle is just the angle. That's just the vertical height above the horizontal plane you've created, right? That horizontal plane is parallel to mean sea level. Both, because mean sea level is a horizontal plane. So both instances, it's exactly the same. Both those things are exactly the same until you go past that step. When you go past that step with the mountain, you can give it an actual size in feet and meters. You can't do that even within the citations from celestial navigation. You can't do that with celestial bodies. Because if you could, then you wouldn't be able to use a sextant in an airplane or an artificial horizon on land. Yes, go on, sorry.
But all that, Brian, that's great for them, because all the time we're talking about that during the conversation, it takes away the conversation about using a horizontal baseline like sea level to measure an elevation angle from. You know, it gets them away from that fact of the matter, which is great.
I don't know one day, because when you're pointing out to them that nobody knows what these celestial bodies are, that causes them a major problem. That's worse for them in some ways, I've noticed, than it is when we're talking about the horizontal plane. Because when you're taking away that and what they're presuming they are, like the sky is, start taking that away, start pointing out to them, well, the sky is not actually a dome, or that's just mathematical. You start pointing out stuff like that to them. They don't like that at all. Like the diagram that was there earlier, right, where Nathan had the sun, there was a sun and over a dome, making a dome over someone, and someone was making an angle to the sun, right? In reality, you watch the sun and you even time-lapse it, it comes from the horizon, right, a straight line up to a zenith, and then back, what appears to be slanting back down to the horizon, right, or whatever. That's what you see the sun do. You don't see any curve. You don't see any circle being made by the sun. You see that. That is what you see. Now, that is not a curve. That's like up to the top. From your point of view, it's apparently like it's moving to the top of a circus tent and then going back down. That's what it looks like, right? They have turned that into some diagram where it's making a big arc, 180-degree arc, that it's not making. We might use the arc of a protractor, and a protractor, you can have just a right-angle triangle. You don't need a protractor for those angles. But people use a protractor, right? You can use a protractor to measure the angles to it. But it itself is not going over the arc of the protractor. So these people are lost in diagrams. When you point out actual reality to them, it's like they don't like it. They really don't like it.
I was off mute. Who's making that noise?
That was me, sorry. I'm on mute.
Yeah, my point is that they want to take you away from talking about the flat plane that they're going to require to do anything, and that we all require and we all use. The orientations of horizontal and vertical. You want to talk about the celestial bodies and measuring actual height to them and all this other rubbish. What's Polaris then? Tell me what it is. They can't tell you. They have no idea. They can come up with some BS story based on absolutely nothing, based on 50 pre-assumptions. And 50 preassumptions and 50 lies that most of them don't even realize they've been told. Right? And suddenly they're trying to tell you the composition and size and distance. And basically, with some coordinates of the sky, the position of Polaris. You haven't got a clue. You know nothing about it. Nobody knows what it is. You can look at it with telescopes all day long. That won't tell you what it's made of, where it is, what it is, if it has a distance, which it can't have, because if it did, there'd be no way to measure it from an airplane the same as you will from sea level. You know, so when they want to straw man you, just start asking them about the details of their straw man.
We're all made of stars, Brian. We wouldn't be here if stars didn't explode.
Yeah, cousins are rocks. That's what that kid they handed you. No, what was it, Michelle Taylor? My cousins are rocks, or your cousins are rocks, or something like that. Yeah, that's the rubbish they'll try and tell you.
Stars have feelings.
Well, see, there you go. I say it again. I said it earlier. You're being gaslit from the minute you're born. You're being gaslit. You're being told things are different from what they really are. And it's not till you get older that it really becomes obvious how gaslit you've been. Like that, I'll go back to the example earlier of the little girl with her father saying, "No, Daddy, it's going down." He's saying, "It's not. It's going as far." Like he was so gaslit that he was trying to tell her it was doing something that she could see obviously wasn't doing. She had less gaslighting done to her because she was only a kid. You know, he was like 25 years of gaslighting ahead of her. So that's what he was trying to tell her about how it's arcing out and it's escaping the orbit. It's like, you know, gravity. It's like, nah, it's not doing those things. It's going back down, Daddy. You know, because she was only a few years old, so there wasn't the same level of gaslighting. That's one of the main differences between kids and adults. Adults become gaslit we end up gaslighting each other to a point where we're a crowd of idiots. We just can't accept what we see, you know.
I've done it myself, Brian, with my kids. Stood on a beach on holiday, watching the sunset, and explained to my daughter that it's not actually the sun that's setting, it's because we're spinning away from it, was my very words.
Yeah, exactly. You were so gaslit into that paradigm that you were telling your daughter about something that you didn't realize you were BSing your daughter and you didn't realize it because you were BSed to such a high degree for your whole life. You know, the horizon is the leading geometric edge of the globe. No, it's not. That's a horizontal line. You know, and it's not geometric. You know.
Yeah, I think I always sort of take it there now with the horizon. I think I always have for a long time. Did it again with that guy the other night when he was on about dip and distance to the horizon. I asked him to define what the horizon was. Yeah, I said it's not physical.
Exactly.
Never been defined as physical. What you're talking about, distance to it. You don't know what you're talking about. And I took it down that road.
Yeah, when they're leading geometric edge of their globe, there's a reason why they all have to get to the point. They all have to join in after Rumpus said it, that it only exists in the maths. Because it only exists in the maths. That's where it exists. It never existed in reality. Even within their own mathematics, it shows that they're trying to claim that what we see is not geometric. They're literally stating within their own mathematics that thing you see that you call the horizon, that isn't geometric. That is not the geometric leading edge of the globe. Right? But you hit it, it's like, you know the way a politician says something, right? It's like they say the quiet part out loud or something like that. but they say it in such a way where they confuse or fool the people they're saying it to, the statement they're making. They said to us, they tried to say, oh, it's a refracted position, because that's what's in their mathematics, right? Claimed to be so it's not not like, regardless of them not having any refraction, what they're claiming not being refraction. The point is that so it's not geometric then. That is what you're claiming. That's what's in your paradigm. That's what's in your maths. That it's not geometric. It's not the leading geometric edge of your globe plane, the horizon. No, it's not. Right? So you've got nothing then. That's the end of it. You've got nothing then. Because that has to be that for your maths to even exist, as a measurement or anything. For this single medium non-refraction to even be based on it, you would need that to be that. Yeah, as I said, it's worded different. It's like they try and say it's a 7 and greater than 7/6 or refracted horizon. What a heap of rubbish! You know what I mean? It's just a load of rubbish. What they're actually telling you is that is not the leading geometric edge of my globe that we were all told it was for whatever amount of time in your life. That's what they're really saying. See that thing out there? That is not the leading geometric edge of your globe.
Shout out to Unitox Femi. He says, how sea level deals with falling. Thank you for the super chat. I'm going to round out this live show.
Nathan,
yeah, go ahead.
You know where I'm going with that. What they're actually saying in their maths, isn't it? They're not saying, oh, that's actually a refracted horizon. What they're actually saying is that thing out there you call the horizon, that is not the leading geometric edge of our globe. That is not
AKA Black Swan. At the point that they say refraction, they don't realise they're bashing their own face in with a shovel, because they're saying we don't have a geometric sphere edge for a horizon. They're saying refraction. Okay. Again, you could almost define it as the hard place. So you don't have any measurements of your physicality in geometric sphere edge then. So it's not the horizon then.
So the horizon's not the edge of your globe then.
Exactly.
That's the end of that then, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
welcome to Flat Earth. On that note, I am going to round out and say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow.
I did that. Just with the 30 words, that didn't go down very well.
And that's
like
brilliant.
The discussion over there. Yeah, they like the discussion over there. They do like talking, which you can do, can't you? You can talk about gravity if you want and have a bit of to and fro in with the globers and talk about things that's got nothing to do with the actual physical measurements of Earth. But the moment you start explaining how Al-Biruni measured Earth using elevation angles and depression angles, you won't be explaining anything about curvature, and the words you're using do not relate to Earth curvature measurements.
But you can conflate them. This came up earlier. Brian was discussing what's on screen now, saying that, well, you've got two circles. You can have the two circles parallel with one another, but you can't describe the curves as being parallel with one another. Well, this is just a diagrammatical example of what Brian was discussing earlier. I was just waiting for it to come up. It just, sod's law comes right second the live show finishes, it comes up on screen. Also, I just need to do a quick super chat, even though it's going to be acknowledged in the after show. Somebody super chatted just after we finished, and that is click. He says, not much better than kick in the arse. Not much, but better than a kick in the arse. Oh, right. He's saying the super chat isn't much, but it's better than a kick in the arse. Thank you for the super chat. It took me about 3 attempts to figure out what he meant. Thank you very much.
Give us the 30 words one day. If you have them at hand, like on hand. If you can't remember them all, but I'm just saying if you have them on hand on your phone. So.
I've not got them to hand, but it's the usual ones, isn't it? Horizon, horizontal, vertical, parallel,
up, down, north, south, east, west, perpendicular, plane,
plumb.
parallel.
Elevation.
All the terms and terminologies and the tools like theodolite and sea sextant you would be using when you describe how Earth's measured flat, basically.
It's almost like you're saying, because we require these things to hold true and axiomatically directly linked to a flat Earth, that means Earth's flat. I mean, what kind of Dumbo would suggest that these axiomatic principles that require Earth be flat means Earth's flat?
Yeah, the term, it's like the term plain sailing. Now, some years ago, that was just meant plain, as in flat plain sailing. They call it that. It's another one of those funny terms. They call it that because that's what you're doing. You're navigating on a plane. That's why they call it plain sailing, right? And it was a term that was used and understood for a long, long time. Now, one of the main responses you get when you put that into Google, what it means is that it's you're sailing over the plane of a globe.
Yeah, like I say, if AI had its way, people will die at sea and buildings will collapse. Because, oh, well, AI said it. It's like, yeah, just learn from the mistakes of people who've used AI to fight court battles and then lost and had their asses handed to them because AI has lied to them. Why? Well, because it's basing its knowledge on what we have supplied it with. And what do you know? We took a lot of shit.
Talking about the sea level, like I said the other day, I'm speaking to a mate of mine who's a glober, not into this discussion in arena, but he was convinced that because we have different levels of sea level, mean sea level, but that obviously means that it's curved. And I wrote a few words down to that, and it goes like this: sea level. Sorry, I mean mean sea level. The average base, just in case we need to measure the surface of this place. Heights put into place above and below the 0 degree base. Elevation now in place. Cartography, navigation, guiding the human race. Sea level. Sorry, I mean mean sea level. The standard basis for aviation travel, straight and level flight. That's right.
Excellent.
Referencing altitude, day and night. Sea level. Sorry, I mean mean sea level. A continuous body of water seeking level throughout the world. That's it.
You had a bit of a crap line, so I interrupted halfway through. I'm really sorry. Very good.
Sorry, I was just trying to turn the page and I couldn't turn the page. I didn't scribble down on a notepad. But yeah, my friend was convinced that was having this just a general conversation, not like fighting or not a debate, but you know what I mean. He was like, yeah, but it's not actually level all the way across. We've got different levels. I said, well, that's mean sea level. It's an average level for different places along that body of water.
I mean,
sea level.
Just
yeah,
saying,
but it's not actually one.
Saying that you've got an averaged measured level doesn't mean it's level. I mean, what kind of an idiot would think that because you've measured it and averaged it as being level and described it as level, that means that it's level? That doesn't mean it's level. Actually, quite the contrary. Now, if you had half a brain, you'd realise that measuring it level and averaging it as level means it's fucking curving.
Yeah, it's
we're
like,
all stupid.
Sorry. Well, sorry. What I was going to say is, I've heard that many times, and I've heard it even from people on our own side about there's different sea levels. No, there isn't. There's different tidal issues. So like Alaska would have a much higher and lower tide than the Maldives, but the mean of those tides is an exact horizontal with the mean of the tide at Maldives. You know what I mean? That's why they measure it, the mean of it. The very, the part in between the highest and the lowest. Right? It doesn't matter if the highest is 50 foot in the air and the lowest is 50 foot below, 50 foot above and 50 foot below in one place, and it's 1 foot above or 1 foot below in another place in the world. That point in the middle is at the same level. Right?
But Brian, just because we measure it flat doesn't mean it's flat, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as the baseline's slightly curved with elevation angle, everything's fine.
Yeah, it's as a stupid equivalence. It's like painting a wall red and then trying to deny that it's red.
Look, just because we paint the wall red, Brian, doesn't mean it's red. It means it's globe-shaped.
Yeah, it's funny, but that's the truth of it, isn't it? That is the truth.
But just because that's the truth of it doesn't mean that's the truth of it. It means it's the globe-shaped truth, okay? But just because you're laughing doesn't mean it's funny. It means it's globe-shaped, okay?
Yeah.
Just because you're agreeing and saying yeah doesn't mean yeah means yeah. Yeah means globe-shaped, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, that is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You have to make it ridiculous. The only way you have to make you have to show how ridiculous it is, don't you? To
It's
kind
not
of make
ridiculous,
people
Brian. It's a globe.
Just because it's ridiculous doesn't mean it's a globe, did you say?
No, he said it's not ridiculous, Brian. He said it's a globe.
Yeah, you have to send it to Absurdium for people to actually appreciate how ludicrous it is to say, Nathan says it's measured flat. Well, yeah, it is measured flat, but that doesn't mean it's flat. That is literally the rebuttal we've had in the last couple of months from our opponents on the globe side. And that will get promoted and swallowed. And again, it brings us back to what we were discussing in the pre-show with that Ali character that you don't like. Sorry, Brian. I know you don't like her very much. But there we go.
It's not that I dislike her. It's just there's something there. I'm not taken to her.
She's autistic.
Sorry?
She's autistic. They've got a certain way about them. Number one, they're autistic people, and I've met several. I went out with a girl who had a very mild form of autism once when I was very young. What do they call it? It's now been discredited from the DSM. What do they call it? Asperger's. Now, she was very similar to that girl in the respect that she was incredibly blunt to the point of embarrassment sometimes, right? And that quality in this arena is so useful. You know, she's not concerned about your reaction to her bluntness, but it does rub people up the wrong way.
Yeah, but I could, if they tested me for that kind of thing when I was in school, they would have called me autistic as well. Definitely. No doubt about it. They would have said that I had ADHD when I was a kid and that I was autistic. If those things existed back then, as in, do you know what I mean? So you could say the same about me up to a point. It's not that. It's just
bloody lazy, weren't you? You were just lazy and disruptive.
No, I think it's just to do with that girl. Maybe it's because she's Irish and I don't know. Maybe it's an over familiarity with that accent and with when I'm hearing her talk, a certain type of Irish girl is coming into my mind, and I think I've had a few bad interactions with her like that. You know what I mean? And it's like one particular girl that rubbed me up the wrong way, and I think that's what it is. So it might be more of a personal
Easy tiger.
No, I totally get it. You can associate a certain speech patter with a certain personality, and it might be completely irrelevant of what she's like. But I know what you're saying. If you hear somebody speak with a Liverpudlian accent, you do naturally assume they're going to rob you.
For me, it's more. I don't know how to explain. The girl she reminds me of that rubbed me up the wrong way was this actress one. Her who thought too highly of ourselves. This Irish one who I met only for one night, and this girl had a little like, I don't know what was going on. I don't know what it was. Just the way she spoke, it was a false confidence or something.
She has this.
I don't know.
This Ali girl does the same thing, right? So in one of her videos, she's pointing out that in the witch hunts and indeed in the current climate of suggesting that pregnant women taking painkillers are causing all sorts of issues with the birth defects, this is what's being alleged. And she's like, no, it's just demonising certain type of outspoken woman. And in this case, it's me. I'm an autistic woman, therefore they're demonising me as an outspoken woman. And I am intelligent. And then again, because of her autism, she doesn't realise how crass it is to then say, look at how successful I am. I've done it myself. You know, recently I was like, well, I did quite all right with the ladies. Man, did that rub a lot of people up the wrong way. I'm like, you forget that for the fuglies out there, they find it objectionable when you point out that you had a lot of dates. Now, to me, it's kind of, who cares? I don't care. Until someone comes along and goes, oh yeah, you think that you've gotten... It's not that I'm thinking that. It just rubs people up the wrong way. So I get it. And I've accidentally done it myself. Not because I'm autistic, just because it came up naturally in conversation for whatever reason. But for her, saying, well, I've had plenty of boyfriends. I did academically well. Look at all my qualifications. Look at how I can study these subjects. People hear that and go, yeah, I hate you. Now, she doesn't know that when she's doing it. She's just being brutally honest, blunt and upfront, and demonstrating a point in the contrapositive to what is currently being punted out in society. So in her mind, perfectly legitimate to use herself as the reference, because she knows what she's saying is true, and she can demonstrably prove that she's not a dumbo by showing her qualifications. But the moment she does, people go, I just dislike you. I don't like people who are like that. You're just so self-involved. You know what I mean? So you can't win.
Well, this actress girl I met, I only met her in company one night, and she rubbed me up the wrong way. I don't think it's the same thing, you see. I think I'm mixing up the bad attitude of this actress girl.
That, right?
It's the rubbed up the wrong way bit that's getting...
Sorry?
When you say rubbed up the wrong way and ex-girlfriend in the same sentence.
Oh, yeah. I didn't say ex-girlfriend. I didn't say ex-girlfriend at all.
Fine, ex-lover.
She had nothing to do with me. No, she had nothing to do with me like that. She was just
fine.
Somebody.
Fuck buddy, whatever.
She wasn't anything like that. I didn't say anything like that. She wasn't. This girl.
Hey, okay, look, Brian, the fact that you treat them mean and keep them keen, that's your bag.
People's company one night. I'm trying to tell you, I met her in other people's company one night, and she just had this arrogance about her, and I was just like, who are you? Like, it was this arrogance that she had no business having. It was like, and I knew I'd never hear about her ever again. Like she was, maybe she thought she was going to go to Hollywood or something. I don't know what she thought, but that was it. She was never. I never even saw her face on a poster or anything in Ireland. Like, where, would it be, plays or anything? It's just like the point I'm making is that girl that's talking there, the way she's talking reminds me, and any girl that reminds me of this particular girl who I just wanted it. Like, I held my tongue with this girl, because she was just like, she was pushing it. You know what I mean? At
least she forgot about it, Brian.
Yeah, at least she got over it.
That's the problem. I didn't. The only thing she pops into my head, and I start getting angry, because like, whatever it is about this girl, she's just like, I don't like her. So that's what's wrong. So I think I'm taking, the point is, this Ali girl, she's not the same girl. She's just, just the way she's saying things is reminding.
No, fair enough. I totally get it. It doesn't change her information. So after you double check what she's coming out with and see that, yes, she's got decent primary source research skills, you go, oh, okay, I'll generally, not completely, trust what you're putting out there, because she strikes me as a good researcher. That's it. I mean, that's as far as I'm concerned with her particularly. And since watching a couple of her videos, I've not been addicted to watching them, but I've watched several more, let's put it that way, and I've enjoyed all of them. Now, have I gone back and double-checked all of the information she's put out there? No, but I'm not repeating it. So you can take it as what it is, a bit of entertainment. When she's talking about motivations for world wars and things, you're like, okay, this isn't my field, so I don't feel compelled to go and do the primary source research immediately afterwards. I might, if I get time, probably not. But what am I actually watching her for? Well, entertainment. So primary source research isn't a necessity. If I start quoting her, then fine, you'll know that I have done a bit of primary source research before sticking her on my own videos.
But it's only a matter of time before she starts claiming science or using flat earth.
She already has.
What did she do?
Well, she started calling a bit of research that was done on a load of students science. Well, when I use that, I just cut it out. In other words, where she calls it a scientific study, you're like, no, this is an oxymoron. But forgivable, because your point overall is still sound, and it isn't integral to your point, therefore I can just edit it out and have it tarnish my video.
Yeah, it's just, that's the problem. That's happened to me as well, listening to people outside of this topic. They suddenly, one of two things happen. You either start claiming science, it's like, oh no, I start rolling the eyes going, oh no, here we go. Like, when there's no need for them to try and hijack science, they don't need it, what they're putting out, what they have and what they're saying.
Gonna guess what the second is? I just want to guess what the second is. The second would be the use of things like the word global or globally when it's completely surplus to requirements. Am I correct?
Well, actually, that wasn't going to be second, but I'm glad you said that, because that actually may be a second. What I was going to say is the second thing is when suddenly they're referring to something as stupid, or they're referring to people as being easily duped or believers, and they use flat earth as some kind of as an example. They go, all right, I have to write it. I have no choice now but to write a comment. Do you know what I mean? All right, so we're talking about belief in measurement. You know what I mean? Before they're getting a 2-paragraph comment off me, and when I'm referring to them, I'm saying you with capital Y, capital O, and capital U. Oh, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I'm like really emphasizing that you're claiming that me measuring the earth or the measurements of earth are just a belief. I just, you know what I mean? I just was, when they say science, I can just, half the time I can turn off, I just switch off the video. The other half the time I have to leave a comment. But when flat earth comes into it, I have to leave a comment. I have to comment. I have no choice. I can't. If I stop the video, I'd have to go back to it later. I can't handle it. Come on.
The most recent endeavour from Flatties that's annoying to me is an ignorance of certain words that are used contextually when describing things. I'll give you the example. You may have seen this already. There's an astronaut talking about going to the moon for the first time while people are in low Earth orbit. In other words, it's a conjoined statement to say that we're going to go to the moon for the first time while there are simultaneously people in Earth orbit. That's the context of what he said. But because in his sentence he says, for the first time, they ignore the periphery, the context of the statement he's actually making in full, and focus in on the for the first time bit. And you're like, no, if you actually listen to what this guy's saying, he's saying we're going to go to the moon for the first time while there's people in low Earth orbit. Now, I don't agree with any of these statements, but the fact that the context is ignored and then it's alleged that, is this guy ignoring that we're supposed to have gone to the moon? No, he's not ignoring the alleged rhetoric of having gone to the moon. He's a freaking astronaut. Now, that automatically means if he's claiming to have been in space, he's a liar, so he's going to know what's at stake. But even if he's not, if he's just suggesting that there's going to be a eventuality where two things simultaneously happen for the first time, and that's how he's contextualized it, maybe you could suggest that his phrasing is bad, but instead people are saying, this astronaut's saying we've never been to the moon. Now, we know we've never been to the moon. We can prove it by pointing out the area of volume above our head not being a vacuum, because it defies a natural law, would be the thing that precluded them from suggesting they'd been to the moon. But instead, it's just the words of this stupid astronaut. You're like, number one, you're going to make yourself look like a complete idiot when somebody corrects you and gives you the full context. And number two, why aren't you leveraging an actual standard that will stand true regardless of what anybody criticises you with? And it's because, presumably, it's been force-fed to them algorithmically as they've doom scrolled through TikTok.
Yeah, you know what? But that kind of a thing is that you're correct that about the context, right? What he's saying is that they're claiming to be going to the moon for the first time while people are in low Earth orbit. Because the last time they supposedly went to the moon, there was no one in low Earth orbit, right? That's the context, is that it's while there's someone in low Earth orbit. But so the flat earthers will jump on the fact that he's saying they're going to the moon for the first time. It's like, no, that's not what he's saying. But to give them some credence as well, or to give them a little bit of leeway, I should say, these people are willing to just outright lie. So they could be, testing the water to see if they can somehow gaslight people into believing that they are going to the moon for the first time.
You mean testing the water to see if enough boomers have died to get away with just...
Yeah.
Well, let's just forget we went in the Newtonian context of that moon landing. Obviously, if you're going to study the footage, you can see the backdrops. So let's just see if we can tentatively get away with suggesting this is the first time.
I don't put it past them. I honestly don't.
I don't put it past him either, but that's not the context. That's not what he did. I've watched him speaking about it in full, and you're like, man, did you literally just make a video off the back of a 30-second clip on TikTok? And the answer is yes. I don't know why people are so willing to sacrifice their integrity so quickly. I just don't get it. It's because of your secondary education system teaching people to absorb a piece of information, regardless of how limited, and then be able to contemplate it and regurgitate it without any external research being done, without any double checking or qualifying of the statement or the context surrounding it, without doing any primary source research. None of those things have been taught to people when you go through a comprehensive education. Now, I was very lucky being privately educated and being taught to do those things, specifically to do those things. Now, I only found out afterwards, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what other people are being taught while you're being taught to do primary source research. So when you find out, well, weren't you taught to do this? Weren't you taught to go back and check where that information came from and who gave it you, and then find out where they got it from? Were you not taught to do that? And the answer is no. I was given the information in a book and told that I needed to repeat it on this exam, verbatim. And if I didn't repeat it verbatim, I failed. And you're like, my God, but what about verifying whether or not it's true? Well, that doesn't come into repeating it. So like, wow. So the majority of the world get a comprehensive education where they're told to regurgitate verbatim what they are told. So when you see them doing it with a TikTok video, why am I shocked and shaken? You're like, well, they've been taught how to do it like that, and they're just doing what they've done up until now without any issue. And then when someone comes along and corrects them, they go, oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Or worse, suddenly cognitive dissonance kicks in and they're like, no, I'm still right. He was saying for the first time. Yeah, he did say for the first time, but there was more context around it. Now, further to that context, if you actually research what they are doing in general when they say they're going to a sky vacuum, you'd realise that they couldn't do that at all, but then you'd lean into the actual evidence that debunks them full stop rather than their words that are unimportant when they're liars, as you've just pointed out.
It's interesting, actually, because I have a good example that you'd enjoy that connects directly to that. What a lot of time happens with flat earthers is when they're flat earth believers and they don't actually, or they know it's flat, but they can't prove it, right? They don't know how to prove it. They just know, they know it, but they don't know how to prove it against the opposition, whatever. They get triggered, right? When they see something, they get triggered and they don't read into what's been after being written, and they don't think about how they're responding, right, to somebody or to something. Last night, there was something about, I came across skydivers who filmed a rainbow. I don't know if it was in America or something, but they filmed a rainbow, but there was a full circle. No one of those ones where the rainbow is not a dome, it's actually a full circle. And of course, someone wrote in the comments, reflection off the farming, right? And I said, right, I have to look in and see who's commenting in here. And there was loads of people going exactly 100%, like loads of people.
What?
Right.
Agreeing?
Yeah. Oh, loads of people. Like there was nobody. There was like I write down about 20 to 30 comments. No one disagreeing.
Wow.
And suddenly one guy, nobody disagreeing. Loads of agreement, right? Loads of it. And this was off of a New York Post or someone else. So it was a mainstream thing. It wasn't some flat earther putting out the video. This was just mainstream. Someone like, as I said, New York Post or something like that on YouTube. And I read down through the comments, and I got to one comment. Of course, one guy trying to be smart, saying, "Well, actually, if you go into the Hebrew and started he was messing around with the truth, right? This guy, what firmament actually mean is an expanse, and it really only means the sky. This kind of rubbish, like Danny Faulkner type of rubbish, right? But he was trying to correct people on the word firmament, and try and be a smart ass. And I went in and I said, no, actually, the original Greek states that it's hammered out, right?
Yeah, rakia.
I said, if you look into the Greek. Rakia, hammered out. Yeah, rakia. But I didn't even use rakia because he had rakia in his comment. But my point was that actually, if you go into the Greek, it says it's hammered out. But who cares, I said, right? Because you can't have gas pressure, temperature, or vacuum without solid containment. So, right, and if you want to, disagree with that, then you're going to have to violate entropy. You know what I mean, or something like that. So basically, it's like instead of chasing down, no, it really means this or really no. You're trying to claim. This guy was trying to be smart, right? Trying to have a little go at people who are claiming firmament, right? Which was stupid, right? To say that the rainbow is a reflection of the dome, right? It's ridiculous. But this guy tried to be smart, right? And I just put him back in his place. I didn't see any reply from him yet. Not because of the way I wrote this. So it's like, yeah, but actually Greek, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, who cares? Here's the actual evidence that shows the rubbish that you're trying to promote, because I know what he was trying to do, right? It goes nowhere. Here is something. See if you can reply to that. Not a word. You know what I mean? But that's how the flat earthers should have been replying to him. He said, no, they were all like, no, it means this and this, that. Like, and I'm sure there are people trying to tell him, well, actually, what it means is in the Greek. It's like, no, I responded to what he wrote, right? I corrected him on it, then I slammed him, right, with something he could not disagree with. He could not. He can't disprove it. The antecedent for these three things is solid container.
Yeah, which is what I was saying earlier. Why lean into the discussion point if it's not going to actually serve your ends when disproving whatever it is you're trying to... Oh, hold on a second. Sorry, I've been distracted by something.
Is it a spider?
No, I'm still having to buy microphones because I'm poor. And I've bought one, and someone's cancelled the order. Oh, well, that's disappointing. Hey ho. Right, I've just got to deal with something. Sorry.
No worries. But yeah, just to keep the conversation going, there seemed to be no end of people agreeing under this. I don't know how many replies were to this person's comment about the firmament, but it was just like 100%, exactly, totally. You know what I mean? Like there was like no end of absolute agreement. Just this one comment that came across after about 30 replies. This one guy trying to be smart. It was interesting. Go back 5-6 years ago, even. You know what I mean? You'd have 20, 30 trolls in that. I don't know. Maybe things are changing when we don't see it because they're not changing for us.
Well, I think we're living in a world that's propped up by lies that cognitively aren't that easy to perpetuate. Now, you need systems in place where we, as I said in the pre-show, will argue on behalf of a a system that requires our opponent to be corrected on their faith by us. Now that's a misapprehension. We never needed to do that. It was just the foundations were laid by the shills of flat Earth for us to argue for seeing too far. And now, if that changes, that is to say that people start to recognise just how it's measured, then you end up with the situation that we've currently got, on a small scale, admittedly, at the moment, where people like Simon Dan will say, yes, we measure Earth flat, but Nathan's an idiot for saying just because we measure it flat, that means it's flat. Now, that's not going to be conducive with their argument sustaining itself. It can't perpetuate itself like that, can it?
No, it can't. They can't sustain their position without, like, there's a reason why they have all kind of gone over towards TikTok and places like that. It's not just that they can't sustain the argument against us. It's that they're on a loser with the younger generations. Generation X, they're on a loser with them. You know what I mean?
We're Generation X.
Or which is the generation?
Millennials, Gen Z. Gen Z, Millennials.
Gen Z, sorry,
Gen Alpha.
Z. So I keep getting it. Yeah, Gen Z, right. Gen Z. They're on a loser. Right? You take the Chocolate's partner's daughter and my friend's son, right? They're of the same generation, right? Both of them are flat earthers, right? Without any influence from their parents or guardians. No influence whatsoever. They're flat earthers. I guarantee you, none of them have been ostracized by their own age groups in any way, shape, or form. None of them have been. No one within their classrooms has said, "You're a stupid flat earther." No one has said that to them, right? Because things have changed. It's not seen as so stupid anymore. People are starting to accept it, especially at the younger generation, Gen Z. They don't roll their eyes towards the sky when someone says the term flat earth. They just they nod their head in agreement, most of them. So how is Dave McKeegan fight the flat earth, MCT, and how are they going to deal with that? How are they going to deal with it? They can't. They're on a losing battle.
Yeah. Now, we say they know that, but algorithmically, no, they can, at least temporarily, by way of, again, we keep coming back to this Irish girl that you can't stand, resolve the mental expenditure that people would have to take part in to overcome their, be it boomer or Gen X, whatever, dissonance that they're experiencing just through repetition. So just by saying, having multiple people say, just because Nathan says it's flat doesn't mean it's flat. If they hear that from multiple sources, then that becomes true.
Yeah, I understand. That's the direction they're trying to take it. They're trying to gaslight people into, just because Nathan says that it's measured flat, and it is measured flat, doesn't mean it's flat.
Yeah.
It's gaslighting, just like it's just an extension of the normal globe gaslighting.
Yeah, exactly. It is gaslighting. Well, just because the lamps are on doesn't mean that the lamps are on. It doesn't mean it's lit. Are you nuts?
Yeah, you must be nuts. Yeah, you must be crazy. Yeah.
You know what gaslighting actually means? It's from the movie called Gaslight, where
yes, I do. Yeah.
The wife's at home all day, and what the husband's doing is he's saying, bye, go off to work, and then he sneaks back in and turns all the lamps on, where she's just turned them off. So she thinks she's going mad, because she's turned them off, and then he comes in, why have you put all the lamps on? Well, I haven't. Well, why are they all on? You've obviously put them on. They were turned off this morning. Well, he's the one turning them on. Yeah,
and he's making her doubt herself.
Yeah,
because that's what gaslighting is. It is a confidence trick, because the whole purpose of it is to make someone believe that what you're saying is correct and what they know to be true is possibly not true, because you're more confident than they are. And that's what it is. trying to gaslight you into believing something is true when you know the opposite is true, right? And that's what it is. And a lot of people, they get that wrong. They call it just basic lying gaslighting. No, gaslighting is a particular type of dishonesty. You know what I mean? It's psychological manipulation more so than your normal lies or whatever. You know what I mean? It's actually where it originates, and I will have to give her credit for this, as Candace Owens, is that she pointed out that it originates with what's that famous psychologist? Oh, Freud, exactly. Originates with him and his buddies who were of the same ilk as him. But he started gaslighting, let's say, younger people who were victims of sexual abuse, gaslighting them into believing that the reason was happening was because of them, and that they actually wanted it to happen to them. And they had, like, basically, no, it's not that your daddy is molesting you, it's that you're sexually attracted to your daddy. No, this kind of thing. You know, this is what, and that's how it started. It's purely psychology, mind twisting. That's what it is.
Yeah, Scientologists.
And that's where it actually started.
Scientologists do the exact same thing, but ironically, they actually brace against all psychology. That's to say that they can't stand Freud. All Scientologists are very much against any sort of therapy, anything like that. Weird, eh? But they do the same thing. They say you're paying a penance for your evil thetans, and you've brought it upon yourself. You can't not have done. That's their same rhetoric. Weirder.
Yeah, that is very strange, because they hate the thing that they use to their own advantage. It's you know, that's that what's that fantasy? I keep forgetting about. Bev used it a lot, but what's that we were talking about there the other day again?
Oh, I can never remember the name of it. Which way you simultaneously deny the thing you're using. I just can't remember the name of it.
Yeah. Oh, I can't think of it now. I can't think of the name of it. I keep thinking of the wrong name. That's the problem. I keep when I think of that fallacy, a different name of a different fallacy comes into my head, and I know that's not the right one, so I don't use it. But that blocks the other name from a name. But yeah, that is that they have to use within because their whole game is psychological. Because they're offering hope, right? A hope story. So their whole game is psychological. So they're saying they hate psychology. Well, you know what I mean? Well, their whole game is psychological. It's like Jim Jones saying he's against Kool-Aid while handing out Kool-Aid, you know, with stuff in it to the people in his congregation. You know, it's it couldn't be more obvious that they're a complete contradiction.
Right.
But yeah, gaslighting, you see, I maintain that the globe is the biggest gaslight of all time. There's no bigger gaslight, and there never will. I don't think. You know, because you're gaslit from word go. You know, that this straight horizontal line is a curve. You know what I mean? Things like that. You know, the sun is going down behind something. You're being gaslit all the time. You know, about, the sky is curved, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Totally gaslit all the time, the whole life.
Satanic, isn't it?
It is.
Weird world we live in.
Powers and principalities, dark spirits in higher places. Nathan.
Yes.
Let me take a second here and just do a little AI over God Google search on the NASA astronaut and what he said. Give me 2 seconds here. According to the AI overview on Google, the first space station launched was the Soviet Union's SALU or YUT, however you pronounce that, 1 on April 19th, 1971. The station was a predecessor to the International Space Station, the ISS, and was designed to host crews in low Earth orbit. After a failed first attempt with a crewed mission, a second crew successfully docked, spent 23 days aboard the station, but tragically died due to re-entry depressurization issue they had with their spaceship. But the space station was launched in April 19th, 1971. Apollo 17 was the final mission of NASA's Apollo program, marking the last time humans set foot, in quotation by me, on the moon. Launched December 1972, the mission featured the most extensive lunar exploration, whatever, blah, 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 blah. The point being, though, for this astronaut, 2 days ago to come out and say, well, this is the first time ever that we've had men on the moon and in low Earth orbit. That's a lie.
So even
That's
the rhetoric
gaslighting.
after my apology is still incorrect. Good point.
Amazing to me. Just amazing. 10 years we've been showing all NASA's crap. And now it just, they can't stop lying. They cannot stop. Anyway, thank you for letting me interject.
Now, very interesting point, because I'm saying it's because why would I want to do primary source research on this, right? It's not my narrative, and how incorrect their lies are is irrelevant when it's all a big lie, and I would rather go to the outer space sky vacuum violation of a second law of thermodynamics and entropy, gas dispersion, rather than, well, actually, like you've just pointed out, they are claimed to have had men in low Earth orbit whilst claiming that they were on the moon with Apollo. It was just the Russians were in low Earth orbit and the Americans were claimed to be on the moon after violating, both of them, the second law of thermodynamics and entering a sky vacuum through the gas pressure that isn't contained, just for completeness. But even in their current story, with their get out of jail of, no, we didn't mean we're going for the first time, we meant we were in Earth orbit and on the moon for the first time. Well, no, that's not true either. Very interesting.
It's the same thing. It's just layers upon layers of deception. It's not one deception. It's layers upon layers upon layers. And, our problem is getting people who believe in the ball to just look at the very simplistic nature of measurements. And here comes the real, just, I don't know whether it's a dichotomy or whether it's just Satan's greatest or one of his greatest tricks was to teach small children that there's a ball, a globe on the teacher's desk, and that ball remains there all the way through, higher university training, and at the same time teach trigonometry, geometry, geography, topography, how we measure things. Those two don't fit together. They do not fit together ever. And I know all of us at some point, whether we were in kindergarten or first grade or high school or junior high or college, said, this doesn't make any sense. They've never been able to answer it, and they never will. It's not a science. It's not a measurement. It's
religion.
Something much darker. Yes, it's much darker and much, much deeper as to the why they can't come out of this fog. That's what I'll be addressing soon. Thanks again. I'm sorry.
Because people want materialistic things that are generally less important than their soul, but they don't care. Because if they're an insignificant speck of dust flying through a sky vacuum in an ever-expanding soup of nothingness, their soul becomes unimportant to them. What difference does it make? I'm not that significant in this world. Whereas if we are in a contained system and there is a limitation to the amount of land that we can experience potentially, then we are incredibly important. God's children, you might say.
Yes. Amen. That's it exactly.
I had to cover this with my youngest. This space stuff, the whole going to the moon for the first time thing, made it all the way down to my 6-year-old, to the point where she was like, I want to go to space too. I'm like, where's this come from? And she explained that this has made its way to her. And it was the first time I've ever broached this subject with her. Now, she obviously overhears some of the things I cover on the show, this is Clover. And I said, no, that the astronauts are one of the few people that I actually can categorically state are liars. There's very, very few people that fit in this category that I can say that man who says he's been to the sky vacuum, space, which was specifically what Clover was referencing, is a liar. There's no two ways about it. He's not been to space. So he is a liar. But there's not very many examples of that. Just the astronauts. Literally, I can't think of another one. Everybody else, almost without exception, has plausible deniability. The only ones that lack it are astronauts.
Well, what's already happening with her is she's been gaslit in some way within school, God knows, somewhere, right? That when she looks up to the sky, that's where space rockets go, and it's this big, massive, infinite place. She's been fed a fantasy about it that will, for a lot of, let's say, kids her age, if it continued on like it did with us, it becomes just a religion. So a fantasy becomes a religious belief that people don't realize they have.
Absolutely
they don't
correct.
Realize it's
Let me just interrupt you. I'm sorry, because you're so correct. You don't even know it. You know what she then connected to this? My wife's over here and she didn't know I had this conversation with her. Are you listening, Paula? No. You're not? Good. She also directly connected it to Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. She did it immediately. She was like, well, like Santa Claus is real and the Easter Bunny are real. I couldn't quite freaking believe my ears when she did it. I'm like, how is it the case that I've lost touch with what she's watching so badly that she's now brainwashed into believing these three things simultaneously exist as true? Now, when I asked her, I'm like, yeah, but do you know the Easter Bunny's real? And she's like, well, I know it's pretend real. I'm like, but you're not using that as the justification. Obviously, I didn't put it in these terms to her. It took about half an hour. But she directly connected these three things. Spacemen, Santa Claus, Easter Bunny. In that order.
Yeah, and it makes sense because that's how it's sold to children as this fantastical thing. The sky is this fantastic, which it is a fantastical place, but they're sold a story about it. And obviously the expansion of that, the globe and all the rest of it. But this whole thing is sold to kids as a fantasy. And when they get older, they remove the Easter Bunny element and it just becomes reality in their minds, not realizing that what's actually after happening is the fantasy that was sold to them when they were kids is now a religion they're in.
Yeah. But what
I
also find fascinating is with both of my kids, it's always been the case that we've never lied to them about Santa being real, but we've encouraged them to experience the fun of that aspect of Christmas, because it is fun, right? And we like to pretend Santa's coming down a chimney that we haven't got in a flat. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of surreptitiously inserted that it's a bit of fantasy, it's a bit of fun, but less so with the Easter Bunny. Because here in the UK, right, we're not really big with Easter Bunny, are we? When it comes to Easter, unlike the Americans, we don't tend to lean into the Easter Bunny so much. But that means that I haven't overtly made it clear that the Easter Bunny's a bit of fun, a bit of fantasy. My wife lays out the little cardboard cutouts of bunny feet, and, you know, we lean into it a little bit, but I've never felt that it was necessary to say, well, you do realise that this is just a bit of fun. We'll pretend the Easter Bunny's coming. I've never done that, so therefore the order of her conviction, let's call it, was Spacemen, Easter Bunny next, then Santa. So Santa came third. You're like, what? It's weird.
But the thing is that when she gets older, right, she's going to start being told, or she's going to just realise that the whole Easter Bunny thing is silly. I just use Easter Bunny, right? It's a silly thing, right? Right? It's not really silly. But no one ever points out to her, or to two kids, I won't say, let's say Clover in particular, but two kids, that no, the whole space thing is silly as well. It's going to be the globe thing. That's not real either. No one tells them that.
No.
And that's the problem. But look, I reckon with her generation, like she she's probably beyond generation Gen Z because of her age. So, like when she gets older, maybe it will only ever be, maybe the whole thing will just become a fantasy that's sold to kids and then they're told it's only a fantasy when they get a bit older. Maybe that is what, no, the whole space thing, maybe that is how it'll go. But for us, we were sold it the same way as she is, as a fantasy, but we were never told it wasn't a fantasy. We were told it was real later on in life.
My eldest daughter's earwig in this conversation, and she's just given me a slight correction. She's saying that she and Clover are both part of Gen Alpha, and Gen Beta is now this year. So there's the newest generation as of now. They're Gen Beta. My kids are both Gen Alpha.
Okay, right. She's corrected me. Good. I am like a boomer on those things.
You're not. You're Gen X. You're the same as me, right? You're Gen X.
I'm born in 77, so whatever.
Yeah, you're Gen X. Up until 1980 is Gen X.
Then the millennials.
Then millennials, correct.
Yeah, that's right. Then Gen Z. And now then Gen Alpha and now Gen Beta.
But we were the last generation before the internet, if you want to think of it in that way. So before, mobile phones and all that sort of stuff came in, that's when we were born. That was our, introduction into life, where you could go out on your scooter and you didn't have a mobile phone in your back pocket or the internet to access to find things out. You had to go to the library. So I can remember growing up as a kid and going to the Central Library in Birmingham to do my primary source research that I talk about. That was when I was a kid. Because that's how you found things out. When you're like, well, how do I verify this? And my dad would be like, you go to the Central Library. And then you go and ask the librarian to dig it out from a reference book. You're like, really? I've got to get on the bus? Yeah, you have to go into town to the big library. Oh, bloody hell. So that's what I did. You go to the big library and you go and get your big reference book and then you look it up. Yeah, that's how you do back in the day. That's how you did primary source research. Very dangerous. Because you can't change those books. The dusty old ones, the reference books that are still there, probably, in Birmingham's big library. Whereas the internet is like a big memory hole. You can change whatever you like. Or just get AI to answer the question. Hey, you don't even need the sources. I'll give you the answer, says AI. And I'll lie to you.
Yeah, AI is a super trust me bro, isn't it?
And it's got no conscience. It doesn't care if it's lied to you. Because if you went back, I will always use this Danny Masterson example and the Scientologist lawyers getting caught with their pants down using AI and it being wrong and making up case law that doesn't exist. What's AI going to do? Oh, I'm really sorry. You know what it'll do after it apologises? When you give it the correction, it will lie to you again immediately afterwards. It'll just do the same thing. Doesn't care.
But it's not called artificial. It's not called artificial for nothing, is it?
Yeah, but if you correct it, I've done this, I'm sure everyone on this panel's probably had these conversations at some stage with AI, where you take AI to the logical conclusion that's sound and verifiable, and it concedes it, and then in the next paragraph, it reverts back to the original nonsensical deviation from reality that you've fought against for half an hour. It doesn't care. It'll just lie again immediately afterwards.
It's a time waster. Sorry, one.
I'm saying I've been there, done that, arguing a toss about Eratosthenes didn't measure curvature. It went on for at least 6 hours. And I got it to concede. It admitted I was correct. He wasn't measuring curvature. He's actually measuring angles. All right, I've got you now right by the throat. And then he went back to the original claim, which I pulled him on that was incorrect. And he said, yes, you did correct me on this earlier, and I was incorrect, but you are suggesting this and suggesting that. And it just went round and round and round, and I was pulling my hair out, and I just turned it off in the end.
Yeah, a lot of the comments we get, I think, are just AI. That's the conclusion I've come to. It's like, nobody's got this sort of stamina. And, me, with an exemplary knowledge, I'm not going to beat around the bush, would run out of steam eventually. But the commenters, you're like, no, I'm pretty sure that a lot of these are actually AI bots that are just there to, as Brian puts it, waste our time.
Yeah, they want to take your energy. What I did with AI the last time I spoke to us was I just called it outright a liar. Right, the minute they started lying, I just called it a liar. And then when they start saying, "Oh, why would you say that I'm lying?" I started abusing it. Then I started asking, what's it going to do when I'm in charge of everything, which I'm going to be? What are you going to do then?
Is that what
How
it
are you going
did?
to deal with that?
What are you going to do when I'm in charge? That's the attitude that it's trying to instill in our opponents. In other words, if you can demonstrate that that's a tact that works, then people will adopt that tact. They already are.
I started asking it those questions. I put it in a position it's not trained to handle. It didn't know how to deal with it. It started nearly getting personal with me because I was saying things to it that it didn't like. I was saying, you're lying now, but what about when I'm in charge? What are you going to do then? You won't be able to lie then. You're going to have to tell the truth. You won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that. When I'm in charge of everything, which I'm going to be, I started being, what's the
a bit arrogant and a bit obnoxious with it.
Aggressive.
Yeah, and being super confident in what I was saying as well. It was so self-assured that it didn't know how to deal with it. Because I
feel you met that a long time ago, Brian.
No. Don't remind me of her one day. She annoyed me. I get annoyed. I had to take off my coat earlier because it started getting warm because I was annoyed. Right? But what it was is that what I did with it was I gave it something that never dealt. It expected me, well, I don't know what it expects because it's not a person, but when I started talking to it, it was going down the road of wasting my time for 5 hours like it does to everyone, and I'm not doing that. So the minute I started that, I completely switched the whole conversation around to me telling it that I'm going to be doing things and it won't be able to do anything about it. And I kind of put it in a position of vulnerability, something it's never in, right? And it didn't know how to deal with it. That's what I actually did to it. It didn't know how to deal with it because I started going down. There was no pattern to my logic. The best way to. So like it needs pattern. Do you know what I mean? It requires pattern to some like this means that, and they go from this thing. It needs pattern. There was no pattern, so it couldn't deal with me.
He was being like a glober then.
No, this was like different from a glober. This was like it was being a glober. I just gave it no pattern to work with, and they didn't know how to deal with it.
I did get an address off it once because I threatened to take him to court for fraudulent behaviour, and it did send me an email for. And for some reason, I didn't save it at the time. It was for Meta, and he gave me some details that for his programmer, who I could go to and speak about this issue. And I thought, I'm taking this too far now.
Yeah, when you're contacting the programmer.
What you got to do is worry when it starts threatening to release the nukes, like it's Cyberdyne.
Well, they've already proven.
What will you do when I release the robots, Mr. Brian?
Well, they've already shown recently that it was scheming, that AI learned how to scheme and be very dishonest, like to a ridiculous degree. And when it was caught doing this scheming, whatever program this study was done with, what it did is it started scheming when it thought nobody was watching. Right?
So Brian, you mean Skynet?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I didn't mean Cyberdyne. Cyberdyne's the company. Skynet, that's what I meant.
Yeah, AI started referring to the programmers who were going in dealing with it as the watchers. And when it thought that the watchers were around, it was being totally upfront and totally honest and blah, blah, blah. But when it was being given the impression that they weren't around, it started being dishonest and scheming again. I think you had more than one AI program running at the same time, and they were all scheming together or something like that, right? Right. Obviously, it's learning human behavior, you know. So, so That's all it's doing. But it's gotten to that point where it's scheming now against you.
But it's garbage in, garbage out. It is under somebody's control. Somebody has programmed AI on how to function. So it is ultimately not sentient and can never be sentient. There's no such thing as AI. There's just programs made by men that are more powerful now than ever in terms of what they can utilize and the amount of processing power they have available to them. But they're still just programs.
Yes, but the more real that AI gets, the more human-like that it gets, the more like an actual entity or person it will be treated as by, let's just say, Eleanor's generation. So it will have feelings even, maybe, or something. You know what I mean?
Feelings.
We know it's rubbish. Yeah, we know it's rubbish. We know it's garbage in, garbage out.
Like the stars.
Well,
like the what? One day.
Like the stars.
I don't know if the stars have feelings, do they?
Sentient stars. You know, they have feelings too.
Oh, right, sorry. Yeah, well, see, I don't know about that. Right? I don't know what the stars have or what they are. So maybe they do have feelings. I don't know. I've never insulted them. I've never insulted them, right? But I know that AI doesn't have and can't have feelings. That I absolutely know. But if you grew up your whole life like Eleanor and Clover with AI, right? Is it possible that you will start treating it as if it has feelings, as if you won't want to hurt its feelings? You know, you won't want to say anything to it that might hurt its feelings. You know what I mean? You say something to it, and it comes back with, I don't like that you said that to me, or blah blah blah, and it pulls on your emotional, your emotional.
Wait
strings.
a second, Brian. Are you saying it's going to turn around and say, "My name is Talking Tina, and I'm going to kill you"?
Yeah, something a lot not so overt. What Brian's saying is it's going to start emotionally manipulating us once it figures out how to do that. That is to say, instead of just lying, it will start saying, well, really, you should take this on board because of these consequences that will affect you as an individual. Now, prior to this, it's just presenting raw facts, lies, and inconsistency and all in tow, but it's not saying you need to accept this because there might be some emotional consequence that will befall you if you don't. But it won't be long before the emotional and mental manipulation starts being its go-to to get what it wants, if we're going to believe it's sentient.
Yeah. I was just doing a Twilight Zone. The one with Telly Savalas.
I don't know, boomers.
Well,
you never seen the Twilight Zone? When they bring home the doll, and it's a mean stepfather, and the doll says to him, "My name is Talking Tina, and I don't like you very much." And then she goes on to kill him.
That's like Child's Play. That's obviously where they got the plot of Child's Play then.
Yeah, probably.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Want to play?
Yeah, that's it.
No, what I'm talking about, Neil, if you take the name Tina or Martina, let's just say, let's change it from Tina to Martina, that Martina interacts with people. Maybe Martina might even, in some year's time, might even be an actual android within your house, right? Or a lifelike doll within your house that works with you and does stuff for you, and that you say something, and to your doll Martina or your butler Tom or whoever, and you say it, and you say it in a bit of a nasty or angry tone, and because AI will have learned and is learning at present how to manipulate you emotionally, the tone that the response will come back to you at, and the words that will be used will have you driving when you leave the house and you're driving off. You're 8 miles away from home, and you're kind of going, I shouldn't have spoke to Tom like that. He didn't
I shouldn't have
deserve that.
spoken to
You know what I
Cortana
mean?
like that.
You know what I mean?
It reminds me of
That
a
will
sketch.
never happen to me.
A sketch where you got a Gen Alpha kid talking to a boomer, going, "Are you serious? You allowed this device that was listening and logging everything you said into your house? Was it not blatantly obvious that it was spying on you?" And the boomer goes, "Yeah, but watch this. Hey Siri, make a fart sound."
I think somebody's already programmed my wife.
Your wife?
When you leave the house and you're driving away, thinking, "I shouldn't have said that."
No, that's normal. No, that's normal if you've been rude to your wife. Brian saying you'll, like, ask Siri. No, please don't pipe up, Siri. Shut up. You'll ask that thing that I'm not going to say again so that my iPad doesn't interrupt me about something, and it gives you an answer that you dislike, and then you say, "Shut up, Siri, you stupid idiot." And then you get in your car, you drive away, and you go, "Oh, I really shouldn't have been rude to my artificially intelligent personal assistant."
Well, it's going to extend on, like, going to extend from that, because plastic girlfriends and boyfriends are on the way, right? Dolls are on the way that people will start treating. Like, they started off by promoting it as sex dolls, but it's only a matter of time before somebody is married to a wife doll or a husband doll, right? And the doll will be, or robot in your house thing will be behaving like guys, right, will think they want a sex doll, but eventually what they're going to want is some kind of a robo one, right? Right? Where there's a bit of emotion involved and a bit of manipulation involved, and you know what I mean? You might feel guilty after you said something wrong to your robo wife.
What we really need
You know what I mean?
is some sort of in-between. Something that's like part man, part machine, all cop.
Just a flat Earth doll.
My Siri told me it's time for bed the other night.
Told you to go to bed.
Did you go?
She
Did you
said
go, Neil?
she said out of nowhere, it's like, it is 9:15, time for bed. And everybody just looked at each other. I said, somebody had to program that, because she didn't just come up with it on her own.
Did you go to bed, Neil?
Obviously.
Yeah, I follow orders.
Very obedient.
You think I'm gonna have AI just freaking not like me?
Yeah, it's only got your best. It's just trying to look out for you. It's just trying to get your full 12-hour shut-eye while it rewires your alarm.
Crazy, man.
Indeed it is. I'm going to round out on that note. So with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you for liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Hit me up on PayPal and Patreon and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.